Chapter 1067. Right now, the battle in Liha City could be said to have wiped out all the core forces of the various rebellious forces. Next, they would just have to push forward and reclaim the lost territories in the southern regions. This could be said to be a true resurgence. He might even have a place in the history books in the future. At the thought of this, Wang could not help but feel excited. However, just as he was thinking about the beautiful future, the space behind Wang's head shattered abruptly. A hand reached out abruptly, grabbing him into the spatial gaps and disappearing. On the other side, the sharp swords troop led by Wang Tian kept on spewing out deathly sparks from their guns. However, after the army was defeated, they stopped shooting. Although they had a large number of backup bullets in their exoskeleton armors, time was still needed for the gun barrels to cool down. Thankfully, the Allied forces had lost their momentum. The army of over 100,000 people started to flee, and there was no longer a need for them to continue giving chase. Looking at the fleeing army in the distance, the entire sharp swords troop cheered. Even they themselves could not count how many people they had killed in this great battle. However, there was no doubt that other than Zhao Yinglan, they had contributed the most in this battle. Everyone was cheering loudly, and there were even people who threw away their helmets. Some people shot toward the sky, thinking about the rewards that the imperial court would give them. However, at that moment, space suddenly shattered, and a 2-meter-long spatial crack suddenly appeared behind Wang Tian. In the blink of an eye, he was sucked into the bottomless pitch-black darkness and disappeared completely. As Wang Tian disappeared, the surrounding sharp swords troop immediately let out a series of gasps and started to search for their leader's whereabouts. However, faced with the means to shatter void space, their efforts were destined to be in vain. In the sky, the corners of Prince's lips curled up into a savage smile. "Excellent. To think that you dare to abduct people before me? Do you really think that I'm dead?" After saying that, she wanted to make a move but was stopped by Fang Xinjian. The prince immediately glared at Fang Xinjian. She had always wanted to take revenge on Xiao Shun and the people from the Three Mountains Four Peaks. This time around, they had gone through great difficulty to abduct 2 of her subordinates. This was a great opportunity. After all, these 2 subordinates were not heaven-blessed cultivators. She could sense their locations through her sudden inspiration. Fang Xinjian ignored the killing intent in the prince's eyes and shook his head. "Leave this matter to me. In any case, you can't do anything even if you go." The prince immediately lost his temper when he said that he couldn't fight. She said in a bad mood, "Then how do you plan to deal with them? Before I decipher the mysteries of the Great Tao's testimony, it's not good to attack them directly." Fang Xinjian said, "But don't worry, once I can make a move, I will leave them to you." The crown princess clenched her small and tender fist and shook it in the air. She said unwillingly, "This is what you said? Damn it, this world is so troublesome. I can crush them with one hand, but I have to worry about this and that." "You're wrong. We don't have an absolute advantage in terms of strength," Fang Xinjian said. "In fact, our real opponents have never been these heaven-blessed cultivators. Our opponents are this world's will." Fang Xinjian's huge silhouette once again appeared in Fang Xinjian's mind. This world's will is our real opponent, and the heaven-blessed cultivators are merely its subordinates. It's just like the imperial court's army that we control. Right now, it's just a fight between subordinates. It's far from the time for us to make a move. You feel that you're unable to go all out, but when has this world ever gone all out? Hearing Fang Xinjian's words, a hint of contemplation flashed in the prince's eyes. Fang Xinjian looked at the battlefield under his feet and said calmly, "You continue to oversee the army. The Three Mountains Four Peaks won't make a move against the army for the time being. You can take this opportunity to recover the world." Recovering the world and building up the country could help Fang Xinjian strengthen his dragon qi and calculative abilities, as well as cultivate the royal heavenly great art. Secondly, more resources could also be used to raise the battle prowess of his subordinates, making preparations for the battles to come. While Fang Xinjian and the prince were conversing, Wang Tian and Wang Tian had already been brought to the belly of a mountain by Xiaoxun. Although everything before them was pitch black, both of their armors were equipped with night vision functions, so there was no problem. However, there were no exits in the cave. The two of them exchanged a glance. Just then, Xiaoxun's voice rang out from the hollow belly of the mountain. "This is an underground cave at the bottom of the Jiang mountain. Without me, you guys won't be able to get out." "Who are you?" Wang said furiously. "Do you know who you've kidnapped? Do you want to go against the imperial court?" "Ha ha ha ha!" Xiaoxun laughed. "Don't think that the imperial court will be free of worries just because you've won against the feudal vassals. That Fang Xian won't be able to live for long. How dare you!" Hearing how Xiaoxun addressed him, Wang's countenance changed drastically. How could he allow someone to be so disrespectful to His Majesty? He immediately dashed out in the direction where the voice came from, but he did not manage to touch anything even when he came into contact with the rock walls. "It's useless. I'm only transmitting my voice over. You won't be able to touch me." There was a hint of pride in Xiaoxun's voice. "Even the little emperor that you look up to like a god won't be able to do anything to me, let alone you." Wang Tian and Wang Tian did not say anything. Instead, they tried to think of ways to leave this place. However, after searching for over an hour, they were still unable to find any way to leave. There were extremely tough rock layers all around them. Therefore, after trying out various methods, Wang started to attempt to blast open the entire rock layer. The photon cannon on his shoulder blasted out a light beam with the lowest output out of fear of a cave-in. As the entire cave trembled, the rock layer before them was slowly broken open. However, even after creating a small 30-meter deep hole, the two of them were still unable to find any way out. Moreover, if they were to continue digging, there would be the danger of a cave-in. Wang's Universe Knight's low-spec armor had also depleted a lot of energy and was left with less than 30% of its original power. Just then, Xiaoxun's voice rang out once again. "I've already said that it's useless. This place is at least 1,000 meters away from the surface, and there's still the Jiang mountain, which is 2,000 meters tall. Without my help, it's impossible for the two of you to get out." After trying for so long, although they were still unable to understand how Xiaoxun had managed to do this, Wang and Wang Tian understood that what Xiaoxun said was right. Even if the two of them depleted the armor's energy, it would be impossible for them to get out. After depleting their energy, there would be even less of a chance. Eunuch Wang said with a calm expression, "You trapped us here without killing us. What's your goal?" Xiaoxun smiled and did not say anything. His motive was naturally the imperial court's new weapons, but he could not bring them back directly. Chapter 1068. In this great battle, regardless of whether it was the sharp swords troops' armor or electromagnetic rifles, Wang's and Zhao Yinglan's Universe Knight systems, all of them had been in the limelight, attracting Xiaoxun's attention. "We must capture these great killing weapons and bring them back to study their secret. If the imperial court is able to mass-produce these weapons, the consequences will be dire. These weapons must also be in our hands." At the thought of this, Xiaoxun's countenance turned extremely grim, and his desire toward the imperial court's weapons increased tremendously. However, ever since he witnessed the battle where Fang Xinjian fought against Blood Sea single-handedly in the Serene Mountain, Xiaoxun had already treated Fang Xian as his greatest opponent in this lifetime. Although he was confident that he had the ability to shatter void space, and had also integrated the complete Great Tao's testimony that the three mountains' four peaks had passed down for several centuries, making it so that no one in the world could kill him, he still chose to be cautious when dealing with Fang Xian. It was just like how although Xiaoxun had been observing the battle in secret, he had not taken the initiative to make a move. He had only snatched away the imperial court's newest weapon after confirming their defeat, using the entire feudal vassal state's army as cannon fodder to test the imperial court. This was also because in Xiao Shen's eyes, only heaven-blessed cultivators and great Dao realm experts like them would be the main force in defeating Fang Xian in the future. Everything else could be sacrificed. The reason why he did not bring Wang and Zhao Yinglan back to the Three Mountains Four Peaks right from the start was to prevent the imperial court from having any means to track these two weapons. However, what he did not know was that when he trapped Wang and Zhao Yinglan in the middle of the mountain, one of Fang Xinjian's clones had already arrived. He stood in the middle of the mountain, next to Wang and Zhao Yinglan. Right now, with Fang Xinjian's cultivation, ordinary illusory arts were even easier for him than eating and drinking. He stood there, but no one could see him, hear him, or touch him. Fang Xinjian's gaze swept past the two of them, and he thought, "They're really cautious." Since he was only sending out a clone, he did not mind this little bit of time. He hid next to the two of them and waited for Xiao Shen's next move. Therefore, for the next few days, both Wang and Wang Tian were trapped in the underground cave where they could not see the light of day. Every once in a while, Xiao Shen would send over food and water using the means of shattering void space, ensuring that the two of them would not die. Most of the time, he used the void shattering technique to observe the two of them from afar. 3 days later, Wang and his armor ran out of energy. They had no choice but to take off their armor to survive in the cave. For the next 5 days, Xiao Shen kept on checking the armors that the two of them had taken off. After ascertaining that there were no threats, he finally brought the two of them and their armors to another location. This time around, he brought eunuch Wang and Wang Tian into a dungeon and locked them up. Only the armor was brought back by him. It was a pity that Xiao Shen did not know that regardless of whether Fang Xinjian's sudden inspiration sensed people or objects, there was no intrinsic difference. Sensing the direction of the two armors, Fang Xinjian instantly turned into a stream of invisible waves and passed through void space at light speed. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in the sky above Ding Region's flying immortal mountain. This flying immortal mountain was a massive mountain range that spanned across several regions in the south. There were many myths and legends about immortals and demons among the people. By the looks of it, one of the Three Mountains Four Peaks' important bases was also in this mountain range. Sensing the direction of the target, Fang Xinjian's body moved slightly and he landed on the top of a mountain. His martial will swept out in all directions, and he immediately sensed that there were about 100 people in the stone chambers, cliffs, and platforms of various sizes on the mountain. Most of them were elite disciples and elders, but Fang Xinjian did not think much of them. Only 5 of them really caught his interest. 3 of them gave him a feeling that was very similar to Xiao Shen's. They were gathered on a platform and seemed to be cultivating martial arts. There were also 2 people whose cultivations seemed to be on par with Xiao Shen's. They were cultivating in seclusion in a stone chamber. Looking at their appearances, Fang Xinjian's gaze suddenly narrowed. They were clearly integrating the Great Tao's testimony and attaining a breakthrough to the Great Tao realm. With this, Fang Xinjian understood that he had found the right place. However, he did not alarm them. Instead, with a sway of his body, he appeared before the 2 of them. As for the 2 sets of armors that Xiao Shen had grabbed, Fang Xinjian was not worried at all. It was because he had done something to them when they were in the belly of the mountain. Even if Iron Man were to come, he would not be able to come up with any results, let alone Xiao Shen. In the stone chamber were the Three Mountains Four Peaks' top expert, Qian Huang, and the Longevity Mountain's sect master, Ru Zi. The 2 of them sat cross-legged with their eyes closed. Layers of 9 heavens gang cheese and underground baneful cheese kept on colliding with each other, eventually turning into waves of extremely pure gang cheese that kept on integrating into their bodies. However, under this appearance, Fang Xinjian could sense that the light waves, gravity, and even space around the two of them were undergoing minute changes. These changes were very natural, and even Fang Xinjian was unable to sense any external interference. They were clearly having a deep connection with the world's consciousness, slowly stepping into the great Tao realm. However, through Fang Xinjian's observation, the two of them were clearly not heaven-blessed cultivators. This piqued his curiosity even more. After observing for 1 day and 1 night, Fang Xinjian gained some understanding of the situation. The two of them are sacrificing themselves. From Fang Xinjian's observation, the method the two experts were using to integrate the Great Tao's testimony was very simple and also very tragic. They were using the world's consciousness to slowly replace their own consciousness. In the past, when Fang Xinjian was researching this world's martial arts, he had already discovered that from the Disha realm onward, cultivators' consciousness would be mixed in with some group consciousness from the underground baneful cheese. After reaching the Tiangang realm, they would be mixed in with some group power left behind by countless experts over the generations. The stronger their cultivation was, the more they would be affected by this world. It was also because of this that ever since Fang Xinjian attained the first acupuncture point at the Disha realm, he had not really cultivated this world's martial arts. Right now, the two of them were doing something even more extreme. They kept on severing their emotions and nature to wipe out their own consciousness. They then absorbed and cultivated gang qis to channel them into the world's consciousness. Through this method, they became the world's consciousness's carrier and integrated with the Great Tao's testimony. However, once this cultivation method was started, there was no turning back. The world's consciousness had an astonishing inertia. Once it started to be channeled into a human's body, they would be unable to stop their bodies from being gradually replaced by the world's consciousness. It was like a submarine leaking water. No matter how hard they tried to stop it, the speed at which seawater gushed in would get increasingly faster. No matter how hard they tried to resist, Fang Xinjian felt that they would only be able to hold on for 10 years at most. After that, their own consciousness would be completely wiped out. Fang Xinjian could not be sure what kind of monster would be left behind in the future. Chapter 1069. If Fang Yong was here, he would be able to recognize that this person was Prince Xian's third son, Fang Tao, who had escaped. Therefore, regardless of whether this world had martial arts or not, heaven-blessed cultivators were destined to become experts. If what Xiao Xun saw was really an engine, energy furnace, or nuclear reactor, he would probably sink into doubt and puzzlement. It was a pity that the 2 sets of armor that Xiao Xun had grabbed did not have the Universe Knight's high-end version. They were not powered by a combination of quantum vacuum energy and antimatter engines. Right now, they had already depleted their energy, making it even harder for him to detect what was special about them. When he was on the battlefield, he was unable to sense the powers of these 2 sets of armor. The other Tiangang realm experts could only sense Wang Tian's Xiantian realm, Wang Tian's Disha realm, and Zhao Yinglan's Tiangang realm. One of them, a middle-aged man, had a cold gaze, and the pernicious aura he exuded soared into the sky. His attire was clearly elegant and luxurious, but there was a hint of frustration in his eyes. Therefore, after a few more days, just as he was feeling giddy, unable to understand the more he looked at them, and getting increasingly dizzy the more he studied them, a thought suddenly flashed in his mind. The exoskeleton armor did not seem to be that hard to understand anymore. The part that he was most concerned about with these 2 sets of weapons was the source of their powers. However, right now, pernicious auras were seething all over this young Miss body. Her 72 acupuncture points were crazily engulfing all sorts of pernicious auras and powers in the world. Ever since Fang Tao had awakened and become a heaven-blessed cultivator, his martial arts cultivation had improved at a tremendous pace. After being brought to the 3 mountains 4 peaks by Xiao Xun, He had received nurturing from various martial arts grandmasters and was able to use all sorts of heavenly and earthly treasures at will. He had improved at a tremendous rate and was now at the pinnacle of the Disha realm, having cultivated 72 acupuncture points. It was a small square box on the back of the exoskeleton armor. Xiao Xun's Gangqi slowly penetrated into the square box, and he saw countless supports connected to a piece of rock. There were densely packed prints engraved on the rock, appearing to be filled with mysteriousness. In the center of the prints were 4 big words. After all, they would be able to learn everything at once and even comprehend martial arts transformations that were stronger than the original version. They would be able to instantly see through all sorts of moves. Such aptitude made it impossible for them to not be confident. Celestial stone, God's stone, heaven-mending stone, world-extinguishing stone, there were too many in the myths and legends. The moment he saw the stone and the words on it, his mind automatically filled in all kinds of possibilities. He looked at the stone with a burning gaze and thought about how to borrow the mysterious power of this mysterious stone. The more Xiao Xun studied it, the more he marveled at the profoundness of the weapon in his hand. Before encountering this set of armor, he had found it hard to believe that such a weapon could exist in the world. This joint structure seems to be able to increase the strength of the human body, but how does he move? It was only recently that he had awakened as a heaven-blessed cultivator and unleashed all the foundations he had accumulated in the past. He was the first among the 3 of them to reach the pinnacle of the Disha realm. As Laurie's father had participated in the court's internal strife, his entire family had been executed. Laurie was the only one who had escaped this calamity, as he had been traveling outside to study. From then on, he had set overthrowing the great Jin dynasty as his lifelong goal. Previously, he had been assisting the traitor Liang Bo to take over the Min region. After awakening to become a heaven-blessed cultivator, he was brought here by Xiao Xun. However, Xiao Xun was a heaven-blessed cultivator after all. There were many principles that he did not know, but the world's consciousness did. Clearly, the improvements during this period of time had made them extremely confident in their aptitude as heaven-blessed cultivators. These were heaven-blessed cultivators. Cultivators who could naturally receive the reinforcement from the world's consciousness would not only be able to learn various heaven-blessed martial arts, but they would also be able to receive the knowledge that the world's consciousness was channeled into them. Although this set of weapons is completely different from the theories of martial arts, what it uses is still the energy contained in the world. King Engine? Xiao Xun read out slowly. Is this where the profoundness of this set of armor lies? There were 3 heaven-blessed cultivators who were cultivating martial arts here. Although they already had a blood sea as an experimental material, Fang Xinjian was still extremely curious about lifeforms like heaven-blessed cultivators. He also wanted to verify his conjecture regarding the world's consciousness. However, although this method of integrating the Great Tao's testimony was a little stupid, it gave Fang Xinjian some inspiration. He did not continue to watch how the 2 of them wore down his consciousness. Instead, with a move, he arrived on a platform. As they were unable to sense the powers of the 2 sets of weapons, the Allied forces had underestimated their enemies and advanced rashly. The remaining person was a young lady who looked to be 17 or 18 years old. Her skin was tender and fair, and it was clear that she was a young lady who had lived a comfortable life all year round. Right now, the 3 of them were cultivating together, but all of them wore proud expressions, exuding an air of arrogance as if they were favored by the heavens. Xiao Xun followed this unique feeling and soon found the energy source of the exoskeleton armor in his hands. The 3 mountains 4 peaks had spent a great deal of effort to find these 3 people. Then, each of them was personally brought back by Xiao Xun. Just as Fang Xinjian was observing the 3 mountains 4 peaks situation, Xiao Xun was also actively studying the weapons that he had obtained. Next to Fang Tao was the young man, Laurie, who had followed Xiao Xun to check out the murder scene of the Sharp Swords troop. Right now, Lori's entire body was seething with disha cheese, and 72 streams of aura seethed fiercely like 72 divine dragons that kept on roaring. She was Prince Ding's youngest daughter, Fong Yuan. She had been taught by the Tiangang realm expert, Nong Bai, since a young age. However, her aptitude had always been very ordinary. Xiao Shun was extremely curious about what these two weapons were propelled by. His instincts told him that this was an extremely important point. This material, I've never seen it before. Is it a new type of steel that the imperial court came up with? Just as Xiao Shun was being led astray by the means that Fong Xinjian had left behind, Fong Xinjian had already arrived on a platform. His gaze swept toward the three heaven-blessed cultivators there. I feel that I can already attempt to strive for the Tiangang realm, Fong Yuan said as she clenched her fist. I wonder what the outcome of the allied forces from the feudal vassals this time around is. I don't wish to come out of seclusion only to find that the battle has already ended. And the energy conduction method isn't through the physical body, meridians, or acupuncture points. Instead, it's through all sorts of strangely shaped metals. Regardless of whether it was the material, structure, or the various principles contained in them, or the various prints and shapes that he found to be extremely ingenious, Xiao Shun found it hard to understand them. If it was not because he had seen the performance of these two weapons on the battlefield previously, he would almost think that these two armors were just decorations. What are these threads? Due to the fact that his energy had been depleted, he was unable to test out these weapons directly. He could only channel in gang qis or use the means of shattering void space to slowly observe the internal and external structures of the armors. Looking at the two people who were working hard to commit suicide, Fong Xinjian shook his head and thought, these two old men are probably trying so hard because of the pressure I'm giving them. However, a piece of mysterious rock that was filled with densely packed prints was a lot easier for him to understand. Chapter 1070. Fong Yuan circulated her gang qis gently, and layers of ripples appeared in the surrounding space. Fong Xinjian could sense that at this moment, the distance between them had changed. Changing the spatial distance? Fong Xinjian's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. When Fong Tao and Lori saw this, a faint look of fear appeared in their eyes. Ever since they became heaven-blessed cultivators, they had always been very arrogant and were very confident in the martial arts they had awakened. However, when they came to the 3 mountains 4 peaks and saw the other 2 heaven-blessed cultivators, they were surprised to discover that the martial arts they had awakened were not any weaker than theirs. In particular, the few times they exchanged blows, there was no clear victor. Fong Xinjian watched from the side for a while, and felt a little bored. The 3 of them seemed to be cultivating martial arts together, but they were not willing to reveal their martial arts cultivation methods at all. They were just exchanging pointers or sparring a few times. Therefore, after watching for another 2 hours, with a single thought from Fong Xinjian, invisible ripples swept through the space around the 3 of them. If one were to look down from the sky, they would be able to see that following Fong Xinjian's actions, the entire space on the platform seemed to shatter and then suddenly split into 3. The 3 spaces separated Fong Tao, Lori, and Fong Yuan completely. However, during this process, the 3 of them did not sense any abnormalities at all. With Fong Xinjian's current cultivation, he was able to perform this series of illusory arts without anyone noticing. The 3 heaven-blessed cultivators had no way of sensing that they were no longer facing their real companions. They were merely illusions that Fong Xinjian had created. Don't underestimate Fong Xian. The illusory Fong Tao suddenly stepped out and said, "You guys have witnessed Xiao Xin's Tao of shattering void space, right? Even now, I can't think of a way to kill him. Especially after he fused with the proof of the Grand Tao, his cultivation had become even more unfathomable. He was like a demon from beyond the heavens of legend that came and went without a trace, and it was practically impossible to guard against." And even such a great Dao realm super expert is extremely wary of Fang Xian's battle prowess. He even hopes that after we all step into the great Dao realm, we can join forces with the three of them. Only when 6 great Dao realm experts surround and attack Fang Xian will we have a higher chance of success. Not bad. The illusory Lori continued, Miss Fang Yuan, although the prowess of our martial arts is very strong, our cultivation is too low. The demon sex blood sea attained the great Dao realm and refined the entire serene mountain range into a sea of blood with a single thought. However, he was still suppressed by Fang Xian. This person's martial arts cannot be underestimated. I suggest that we exchange martial arts. Fang Tao said, when the three of us awakened to become heaven-blessed cultivators, each of the martial arts we received were world-shaking great martial arts. However, we specialize in different aspects. If we can learn from each other's strong points to make up for our weaknesses, the rate at which our cultivation increases and our battle prowess will be even higher. Fang Yuan instinctively frowned, feeling very unwilling to reveal her own martial arts. However, just then Lori said, I agree with what you said. How about this? The martial art I awakened is the Crimson Blood Mystic Light Fiend. I can bring out this martial art. Alright. Fang Tao smiled. Then I'll bring out my electromagnetic drive as well. Seeing the gazes the two of them cast over, Fang Yuan's countenance changed slightly. What if I don't hand it over? Fang Tao shook his head and said, Fang Yuan, although your father and my father are brothers, you're also considered to be my younger sister. However, the exchange of martial arts is fair. If you're not willing to hand it over, then the exchange will only be between the two of us. We won't force you, but we won't be able to show you our martial arts either. Fang Yuan's countenance sank slightly. Exchanging martial arts was naturally very beneficial to the growth of one's cultivation. Regardless of whether it was Fang Tao's electromagnetic drive or Lori's Crimson Blood Mystic Light Fiend, Fang Yuan had seen their prowess before. They were in no way inferior to her 33 paradises. This meant that if she did not participate in the exchange, her abilities would fall behind the three of them. The more troublesome thing was that she would be vaguely excluded from the three of them. Fang Yuan's countenance was a little unhappy, but she still agreed in the end. All right. I'll exchange my 33 paradises as well. Although she felt a little uncomfortable at the beginning, at the thought of exchanging one ultimate technique for 2 astonishing martial arts that were in no way inferior to her 33 paradises, Fang Yuan's countenance turned a little better. However, what she did not know was that the Fang Tao and Lori in front of her were just imitations created by Fang Xinjian through illusory art. At the same time when she was being duped, Lori and Fang Tao were also duped into revealing their martial arts in another layer of illusions. Therefore, Fang Xinjian controlled his illusory arts while listening to the three of them retelling the contents of their martial art. Fang Tao spoke with confidence and composure. This martial art of mine is called electromagnetic drive. Everything in the world is formed from many tiny particles that cannot be seen by the naked eye. And the power that pushes, combines, and separates these particles is electromagnetism. This martial art of mine is to control this power. When one cultivates it to a high level, they'll naturally be able to control everything in the world and control the world. As he said that, electric light flashed in his palm, and the surrounding air trembled. As he punched out with a punch, it was like the rumble of cannon fire, and a mountain in the distance suddenly collapsed. But the most important thing is still the increment of one's own strength. The source of everything in the world's circulation is this electromagnetic force. As long as one can grasp this force, they'll possess the strongest power in the world. Lori introduced. The Crimson Blood Mystic Light Fiend is said to come from a powerful sect with a long history. This sect is called the Southern Sacred Sect, and they have a tremendous amount of profound and unfathomable martial arts in their hands. This Crimson Blood Mystic Light Fiend refines the omnipresent light in the air. Combining it with various cultivation techniques, as well as essential qi and gang qis, it can store the light in one's eyes. Once it's released, a soft boom rang out, and as the red light in Laurie's eyes burst out, 2 streams of crimson light shot out from his eyes. Wherever they passed by, the temperature of the air would rise, and there would be explosive booms. Wherever Laurie's eyes passed by, a large stretch of cliffs would shatter. Not only was the crimson blood mystic light fiend an attack at light speed, but it could also be stored for a long period of time. Its prowess was hard to estimate. Right now, if Laurie were to unleash his full power, he would probably be able to kill a Tiangang realm cultivator. This was when he was only at the Disha realm and had only cultivated for a short period of time. In Fang Xijian's opinion, this prowess could almost be used as a space battleship's main cannon. Fang Yuan also started to introduce her own martial art. The 33 Paradises came from an eccentric martial artist whose name is unknown. His effect is to fold and stretch space. The first level can stretch 1 meter to 2 meters or shorten it to half a meter. The second level can double the effect, and the third level can double the effect again. Chapter 1071. Hearing Fang Yuan's introduction, Fang Xijian's gaze immediately lit up. He immediately calculated the effects of the final 33 levels of the 33 Paradises. It was a conversion rate of 8.5 billion times. It could turn 1 meter into 8.5 million kilometers, or it could compress a meter into the nanometer level. The prowess of this martial technique is really, Fang Xijian had to admit that if he had not known about this beforehand, he might have ended up at a disadvantage if he was not careful. In summary, the electromagnetic drive, crimson blood mystic light fiend, and the 33 Paradises each had their own advantages and disadvantages. The crimson blood mystic light fiend has an almost limitless growth potential. As long as the power stored is strong enough, its prowess can increase almost limitlessly. Although there's a limit to the 33 Paradises, with a conversion rate of 8.5 billion times, it's meaningless even if it's at light speed. After cultivating it, one might even be able to obtain an effect that's similar to superluminal speed. Fang Xijian compared the advantages and disadvantages of the 3 martial techniques. As for the last electromagnetic drive, it has many similarities with my thunder-inducing technique. However, I keep having the feeling that it's not enough and that it doesn't seem to be complete. Of course, the 3 of them were clearly not as righteous as they claimed to be. They held back on their own martial techniques and did not reveal everything. Fang Xijian did not plan on stopping the exchange between the 3 of them either. Through illusory arts, he allowed them to complete the exchange of martial technique. He was very curious about what changes would happen to these heaven-blessed cultivators after they exchanged their martial technique. Therefore, in the time that followed, this clone of Fang Xijian remained on the flying immortal mountain, observing the heaven-blessed cultivators' situation. He would occasionally perform illusory arts, testing the growth of the various abilities of the heaven-blessed cultivators like he was conducting an experiment. Other than these clones, Fang Xijian's other powers did not stop moving either. Eunuch Wang and Wang Tian were rescued by the people he sent. However, Xiao Shen no longer paid any attention to these. All of his attention was focused on the 2 sets of armors. However, he kept on being disrupted by the means Fang Xijian had left behind, and he gradually showed signs of going crazy. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the several tens of strange gems in his hands. On them were the words King Engine, S2 Machine, Antimatter Engine, Shrinking Cannon, Black Hole Bullet, Furnace of the Universe's Life and Death, Heaven and Earth, Black Yellow Pagoda. Not only were the names incomprehensible, but the patterns carved on them also seemed to contain all sorts of profoundness of the world, continuously attracting all of Xiao Shen's attention. At the same time, the Crown Prince led the Imperial Court's army of 100,000 south, wiping out the various feudal vassals. Due to the Battle of Liha City, A few leaders and the strongest experts of the 18 feudal vassals had died in battle. The imperial court's army did not encounter any decent resistance as they headed south. If it was not for the fact that they had to occupy, recover, and reform, and the Reformation, the prince, as would be. Despite this, after a few months, the 12 regions of Middle-earth had recovered 9 regions. Moreover, wherever the army passed by, Fang Xinjian would lay down cement roads and replace them with water and electricity. This caused the lives of both the poor and the rich to go through a tremendous change. The quality of life, hygiene, and work efficiency all rose, greatly increasing the happiness of the people. With all these, the imperial court and Fang Xian's reputation was unrivaled. The titles of the Saint Emperor and the King of Resurgence rang out across the world. The pressure on the 3 princes in the south grew increasingly greater. There would be a large number of deserters every day, and the various officials kept on persuading them to surrender. In the palace, Prince Ding looked at the memorial in his hands, and his countenance was grim. He tossed the memorial to the ground and asked in a cold voice, "Who wrote this?" A white-haired official stepped out and said, "Your Highness, the saint's prestige is now at the top of the world. Wherever his soldiers go, those who stand in his way will look down on him. A flourishing era is about to arrive, and it's time for us to serve the imperial court." Prince Ding smiled coldly and said, "All right. Who else has the same thoughts?" "Your Highness, times have changed. Right now, the imperial court is of one mind, and the saint has won the hearts of the people. Your Highness, His Highness the Son of Heaven has swept through the world, won the hearts of the people, and won the admiration of the people. This wasn't obtained through power and influence, but by the will of the heavens. Your Highness, the current sacred Son of Heaven, who is proficient in divine writings and martial arts, inherits the throne. He should be in harmony with the heavens and the people. Isn't this the will of the heavens?" Seeing the officials coming out one by one to persuade him to surrender, the cold smile on Prince Ding's face grew increasingly intense. At the thought of how these people had instigated him to rebel a few months ago, the killing intent in his heart grew extremely intense. Very good, very good. All of you are looking down on me? Do you think that the ignorant Fang Xian will definitely win? I'll let all of you know that all of you are wrong. Everyone in the world is wrong. I'm the one with the will of the heavens. With the support of the 3 mountains' 4 peaks, Prince Ding still held on and refused to surrender. He even wore the dragon robes and crown in private, addressing himself as the emperor. To the other officials, his death was not far away. Fang Xinjian's strength kept on rising as the country was reclaimed. As a large piece of land and population returned to the imperial court's rule, all sorts of resources and dragon chi kept on surging. The first was the troops under him. The number of people in the sharp swords exceeded 10,000. A total of 30 Disha realm experts were equipped with the low-spec Universe Night system. The demon sects Zhao Yinglan, Fu Daoxian, and a Disha realm elder were all equipped with the high-spec Universe Night system. As for the other 5 Tiangang realm experts from the demon sect, Fang Xinjian did not trust them. Therefore, he did not give them any equipment. With that, the imperial court's military prowess was already unrivaled in the world. After witnessing these super-technological weapons, all the ambitious people in the world could only suppress their ambitions. Other than the 3 princes in the south, who were still holding on, no one else dared to go against the imperial court head-on. However, more and more people placed their gazes on these super weapons that the imperial court had developed. Countless people spent a lot of money wanting to get their hands on the secrets of these weapons. Even the warriors in the sharp swords would be tempted by all sorts of money and beauties every day. However, in this world, other than Fang Xinjian, the others only knew how to use them at most. It was meaningless no matter how they tried to get information from them. Other than the military prowess, as a large piece of land and population returned to the imperial court's rule, The dragon qi in Fang Xinjian's body also grew at an abnormally fast rate. Coupled with his modernized society's transformation, he could be said to have won the hearts of the people, and his cultivation of the royal heavenly great art progressed at a tremendous pace. Fang Xinjian also had some gains in the research of blood sea, heaven-blessed cultivators, and the great Tao's testimony. In the underground arsenal outside the city, right now, the underground arsenal's huge space and land occupied almost surpassed the size of the divine capital. The densely packed mechanical cuttlefish were even more terrifying, surpassing 50 million of them. Even though they were specially used for production and construction, they would probably be able to unify the world if they were brought out for battle. Chapter 1072. In the underground arsenal, a tremendous amount of equipment was produced. Most of them were created by Fang Xinjian as a means of accumulating his skills, and none of them were used by the imperial court. At the lowest level of the underground arsenal, Fang Xinjian had turned into an invisible force and was fully focused on controlling the over 1,000 installations before him. A blurry human figure was moving bit by bit under the control of countless instruments and martial will. It was a girl with a height of about 1.4 meters. She was completely snow-white, and her skin was like white satin. The girl had a head of long black hair, which was now like a waterfall flowing down in midair. Her eyes were tightly shut, and she looked like a sleeping beauty. Before the girl, waves of vital energy and blood seethed incessantly in the ball refined by blood sea. However, that huge eye was filled with indifference, as if it had lost all consciousness. Since I can't skip the heaven-blessed cultivator certification process, then I'll create a heaven-blessed cultivator that belongs to me. Then I'll control this world by controlling her. The androids in the Divine Emperor's information can be used to complement this. At the next moment, the entire ball formed by Blood Sea's seal was suddenly crushed by an invisible force. It turned into waves of thick vital energy and blood chi that gushed into the young girl's body. As the vital energy and blood chi gushed in, streams of green blood vessels were exposed on the young girl's body. Green veins seemed to pop up on the young girl's delicate and pretty face, and a hint of savagery flashed on her snow-white face. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly, and her thin and long brows furrowed together. It was as if she had entered some kind of agony. At the instant blood sea was crushed, a large number of instruments in the surroundings also started working. Streams of scorching light were shot out along with electricity and invisible waves onto the young girl's body. They seemed to suppress the disorder in her body, and the savagery on her face also started to disappear bit by bit. Channel blood sees life imprint into number one's body, letting this world treat her as a heaven-blessed cultivator. Fang Xinjian looked at the young girl before him. He watched as her aura changed bit by bit, and the corners of his lips gradually curled up into a hint of a smile. The entire heaven-blessed cultivator transformation ritual took up 3 days for Fang Xinjian. 3 days later, the vital energy and blood and green veins on the young lady's body had completely disappeared. She was like a doll made of snow, curled up and slowly floating in midair. Fang Xinjian stood at the side, closed his eyes, and received all of the other party's sensory information in his mind. It was just like how he had received Blood Sea's sensory information back then. Shocking transformation of gods and demons, this martial art. Just as Fang Xinjian was sensing the martial arts descending from the heavens through the girl's body, an explosion sounded in the air. The doll-like young lady suddenly shattered, turning into a mist of blood that floated in the air. The blood mist seemed to have a life of its own and gathered together once again, turning into an eyeball that was the size of a basketball. The eyeball stared blankly at the laboratory before it. Did I fail? Fang Xinjian frowned and began to think about the reason for his failure. What? The Allied forces were defeated? 13 Tiangang realm experts were completely annihilated? Even Mr. Nong died in battle? Although the flying immortal mountain was a long distance away and Xiao Shen was engrossed in his research, Fang Yuan and the others still received the news from the front lines. However, the news was completely different from what they had imagined. To think that the imperial court had defeated the 200,000-strong army and 13 Tiangang realm experts. This was despite the fact that neither Fang Xian nor Marie had made a move. How strong was the imperial court? Fang Yuan and the other two exchanged a glance, knowing that they had underestimated the imperial court in the past. Right now, the great Jin dynasty was like a bottomless pond. No one knew what kind of monsters were living in the depths of the pond. The only hope lies with us. We must attain a breakthrough to the great Dao realm. As long as we combine the powers of 6 great Dao realm experts, we'll definitely be able to defeat Fang Xian. Time continued to pass by as the worlds north and south faced off against each other. A few months later, close to 2 years had passed since Fang Xinjian had first arrived in this world, when the world was filled with war cries and rebellious bandits. During this period of time, there had been incessant requests from the officials to send out armies to wipe out the rebellious armies in the 3 regions in the south. However, all of these requests were suppressed by Fang Xinjian. He was still studying the changes of the heaven-blessed cultivators on both sides and did not plan on going to war too early. To him, there was still sufficient time. After Prince exchanged all the sword techniques he knew with Fang Xinjian, he announced that he would be going into seclusion. It was as if he was going to go all out in deriving high-dimensional sword arts, hoping to break through the 2-dimensional seal on him. On the flying immortal mountain, 2 waves of invisible pressure descended from the sky. The majestic Qi activities seemed to have caused the world within a range of 1,000 lis to change. As the yin and yang Qis changed at a rapid speed, streams of lightning cut across the sky, strong gales wreaked havoc, and heavy rain poured down. However, the bad weather only lasted for a while. A few minutes later, the sky became clear again. The sun shone brightly, and the dark clouds dissipated at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye. However, the clear weather did not last for too long. Not long after, snowflakes started to drift down from the sky. Heavy rain, lightning, strong gales, heavy snow, sunny weather. All sorts of weather changes played out rapidly within a range of 1,000 lis. It was as if there was a pair of invisible hands fiddling with the world's vital qis and magnetic field. In a stone chamber, Xiao Shen was staring at a black box in his hand, frowning and deep in thought. He saw that there were 3 small words written on the black box: Universe Cube. Occasionally, a layer of faint blue light would seep out from the black box. However, no matter how Xiao Shen observed it or how he probed it with his gang qis, he was unable to obtain any useful information. If it was not because he was holding onto the Universe Cube in his hand, he would have thought that this thing before him was just an illusion. This situation, where he could touch it but could not see it clearly, caused him to feel extremely stifled. Moreover, this situation had become the norm for him over the past few months. I understand now. A hint of understanding suddenly flashed in Xiao Shen's eyes. The cosmic cube in his hand suddenly disappeared, and there was a faint blue light fog scattering out from the surface of his body. It was as if the cosmic cube had gushed into his body. Ha 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 ha, so that's how it is. So that's how it is. I've finally understood the principles behind the Universe Cube. As the blue light fog flashed, waves of intense energy waves gushed out from his body. The world and the universe listened to my command. Endless gang qis gathered at the spot where Xiao Shen's heart was, forming a blue cube-shaped heart. As it breathed in and out, it was crazily absorbing all sorts of energies in the world. Chapter 1073. Before Xiao Shen, Fang Xinjian blinked, his gaze a little baffled. This so-called Universe Cube was something he had casually created using illusory art. Even he did not know the principles behind it, so how did Xiao Shen manage to comprehend it? Moreover, this was not the first time something like this had happened in the past few months. Interesting. Borrowing the knowledge reserves of the world's consciousness, he forcefully comprehended some truth from his delusions? What kind of martial art is this? Xiao Xin was like Ouyang Feng cultivating the 9 manual in reverse. It was even more nonsensical than that. It was because he had directly comprehended powerful martial arts from Fang Xinjian's nonsensical words. Fang Xinjian could vaguely sense that Xiao Xin had not really comprehended it. Instead, he had learned some special martial arts from the world's consciousness after a long period of pressure. Excellent. I've already deciphered most of the principles behind these weapons. Xiao Xin clenched his fists and silently estimated, although I'm still unable to create similar weapons, just the comprehension I've gained has already allowed my martial arts to achieve a qualitative leap. Just then, 2 waves of pressure descended from the sky, and the weather within a range of 1,000 lis started to change intensely. Xiao Xin raised his head abruptly. Master and the others have also succeeded. Qian Huang and Ru Zi walked out from the stone chamber where they were training in seclusion. Their eyes gleamed, and every single move they made was filled with the world's prestige. After 1 year, the 2 of them had finally completely absorbed a portion of the Great Tao's testimony. This Great Tao's testimony had been passed down from the Orthodox Path's 5 Elements sect 1,000 years ago. It was the orthodoxy left behind by the legendary 5 Elements sect and had the authority to control the world's 5 elements. Right now, the 2 of them were of one mind and had even integrated this 5 Elements sect's Great Tao's testimony together. If they were to activate it together, they would be able to control the energy changes within a range of 1,000 lis. The rapid changes in the world earlier were the means they had used after attaining a breakthrough. Xiao Xin stood outside the stone chamber to receive the 2 of them. His face revealed a haggard expression, and there were clear dark circles around his eyes. It was as if even his body had become thinner. Clearly, the few months of hard work had caused his body to become weak. However, compared to the weakness of his physical body, his eyes gleamed with exuberance. He looked at Qian Huang and Ru Zi and said happily, "Teacher, you 2 have finally stepped into the Great Tao realm." Qian Huang nodded and looked at Fang Tao, Fang Yuan, and Lori who were behind Xiao Xin. When he sensed that the trio's cultivation was at the pinnacle of Tiangang realm, he was slightly surprised. He had not expected that the cultivation speed of these 3 heaven-blessed cultivators would be so fast. In less than a year, they had reached the pinnacle of the Disha realm and had now attained a breakthrough to the pinnacle of the Tiangang realm. This was naturally because Fang Xinjian was observing the 3 heaven-blessed cultivators while stimulating and guiding them in their martial arts cultivation. With this, not only did Fang Xinjian's research into heaven-blessed cultivators continue to deepen, but the trio's martial arts cultivation also progressed at a tremendous pace. When Fang Tao saw Qian Huang and Ru Zi, he immediately asked, "Seniors, when will we be able to integrate the Great Tao's testimony and step into the Great Tao realm?" Fang Yuan and Lori also looked over in anticipation at Fang Tao's question. They had already stepped into the Tiangang realm and could be said to be martial arts legends in the pugilistic world, a group of top-notch people. However, ever since the news of the great battle in Liha City had spread, the trio had become even more wary of the imperial court's strength. They understood that the Tiangang realm was insufficient to fight against the imperial court, so their pursuit of the Great Tao realm became increasingly urgent. Qian Huang and Ru Zi looked at each other silently and nodded. Initially, they had not expected that the trio would be able to attain breakthroughs so quickly. Another reason was that they had wanted to wait until they had completed their breakthroughs and had the power to completely suppress the other party before bringing out the Great Tao's testimony. Since Fang Tao had asked, they naturally planned on agreeing to it. Therefore, under Xiao Xin and the other 2's guidance, the trio entered the 3 Mountains 4 Peaks storehouse and chose a set of Great Tao's testimony to integrate. From this, one could once again see how strong the 3 Mountains 4 Peaks foundation was. Other than the Great Tao's testimony that they had inherited, they had also collected a tremendous amount of Great Tao's testimonies left behind by ancient sects and legendary experts. As he observed the trio's process of integrating the Great Tao's testimony, Fang Xinjian's research into heaven-blessed cultivators also deepened. In addition to the terrifying computing prowess provided by the 9 provinces, Fang Xinjian's research had a breakthrough. In the deepest part of the underground arsenal, a young lady with a height of 1.4 meters was curled up, hugging onto a pair of fair and tender legs that were like lotus roots as she floated in midair. Her long white hair was like flames swaying in the wind. Her ruby-like eyes emitted a demonic glow as if there was blood flowing in them. "I've finally succeeded. My android." Looking at the white-haired young lady, Fang Xinjian finally broke into a satisfied smile. He had researched for a total of 2 years and made over 100 attempts within a few months. He had also gathered countless heavenly and earthly treasures and various resources from across Middle-earth. He had finally succeeded in creating this android. He had also finally bestowed Blood C's life imprint and the authority of a heaven-blessed cultivator to the other party. Right now, the android before him was a heaven-blessed cultivator acknowledged by the world's consciousness. Fang Xinjian was able to connect with the other party's consciousness at any moment, making the other party listen to his commands completely. So that's how it is. Using the android as a transit point, Fang Xinjian freely roamed the entire world's consciousness. There seemed to be countless data flashing in his eyeballs. Many epics, many stories, countless myths, and countless legends appeared before his eyes. Right now, what appeared before Fang Xinjian were the stories that had happened in countless worlds. The many worlds gathered together, and countless timelines stacked together, intertwined with each other, and kept on branching off. Even more timelines were born, eventually forming a massive human figure that was hard to calculate. Looking at this giant once again, Fang Xinjian understood even more from the flashing information earlier. With his authority as a heaven-blessed cultivator, his astonishing calculative abilities, as well as the rich calculative abilities he had in the 9 regions, as well as the effects of his high-dimensional sword arts, which were like a strategically advantageous building, he finally had a better understanding of the world before him. Are you in a deep sleep? Through the heaven-blessed cultivator and the Tiangang Disha system, I'm slowly recovering from my injuries. But what kind of existence is it that can defeat you? Right now, Fang Xinjian already understood that the consciousness of the human, formed from countless worlds, was the world's consciousness. The so-called heaven-blessed cultivators were a part of this world's consciousness that had been revived. They kept on getting stronger over several hundred years, ruling over a world, and would eventually die, once again turning into nutrients for the world's consciousness. Countless worlds, countless planets, and countless heaven-blessed cultivators were born until they died, replenishing the damage to the world's consciousness over and over again. Chapter 1074. If it was said that the martial arts that heaven-blessed cultivators learned, such as the shattering of void space, electromagnetic drive, 33 paradises, and so on, were world-shaking ultimate arts, then the existence of this giant, which had countless worlds as its body and millions of lives as its power, was already an unrivaled ultimate art. It contained theories and profoundness regarding energy, mass, consciousness, life, space, time, dimensions, and many other aspects. Even Fang Xinjian was unable to understand them completely. Almost each time he observed it, it would bring about great enlightenment to his cultivation. As he continued to observe the circulation of this system, Fang Xinjian gained many new levels of comprehension toward the world, space-time, and life. After observing the world's circulation for 7 days and 7 nights, combining all the knowledge and martial arts he had learned in the past, an unprecedented and unbelievable martial art slowly appeared in his mind. However, his actions were like that of a hacker who had hacked into someone else's system. Even though he did not make any modifications or invasions, and even though he was so small that it was negligible compared to the other party, there was still a backlash. Fang Xinjian felt his heart skip a beat, and at the next moment, he completely severed his connection with the android. He also woke up from his deep comprehension of the world. Although he was unable to continue observing the entire process of the world's circulation, the past 7 days had given Fang Xinjian enough inspiration. Right now, his mind was filled with surging inspirations. The various knowledge he had learned in the past. The Celestial Eradication Sword Technique, Heart Sword Path, High-Dimensional Sword Arts, as well as the Royal Heavenly Great Art, 33 Paradises, Electromagnetic Drive, and many other martial arts, all connected up in his observation of the world. Fang Xinjian did not say anything. He stood up and immediately planned on entering seclusion to cultivate before this inspiration was extinguished, completely completing this martial art in his mind. A stream of consciousness instantly scanned through the entire underground arsenal. Countless machines trembled slightly and were activated completely. The entire arsenal's defense system was instantly activated, turning it into a great fortress. Fang Xinjian turned to look at the androids before him. No one knew when it started, but the girl's white hair had draped over her body. Her ruby-like eyes blinked as she looked at Fang Xinjian. She was naked, revealing her white and tender skin, but she seemed to be used to it and didn't feel any shame. This young lady was one of the androids that Fang Xinjian had created during this period of time after depleting countless resources that could be used to build over 100 divine capitals. She was also the only successful product that had integrated with heaven-blessed cultivator's authority. Based on Fang Xinjian's judgment, her super-strong strength and the superweapon she was equipped with, as well as her heaven-blessed cultivator's authority, allowed her battle prowess to be in no way inferior to a Tier 6 divine-level cultivator. Jiuqian, don't let anyone in. Kill whoever comes in. As he spoke, Fang Xinjian turned around and left. With every step he took, his body dissipated until he completely disappeared before the young girl's eyes. Also, put on some clothes. Yes, father. The young girl who was called Jiuqian's eyes flickered a little. She looked at her naked body and tilted her head to think about the meaning of clothes. At the next moment, the artificial skin on the surface of her body seethed and turned into a set of clothes. Perhaps it was because she had only come into contact with Fang Xinjian before, but she had put on a set of black robes that were the same as Fang Xinjian's. The black robes were like black clouds that spread out and floated around her, causing her body to appear indistinct. However, it also wrapped around her vital areas. I mustn't let anyone enter the factory, Jiuqian mumbled softly to herself. At the next moment, the vacuum engine in her body was suddenly activated, and waves of golden air currents burst out from her body. Violent gang qis soared into the sky with an overwhelming aura, yet the power was extremely exquisite. They instantly filled up every corner of the entire underground factory, yet they did not harm any machinery or metal. This was not all. After the gang qis filled up the entire underground factory, they continued to extend out. They only came to a gradual stop when they reached a range of 10 lis. In the palace, the terrain of the entire Middle-earth's 9 provinces appeared in Fang Xinjian's mind. Countless light spots that represented the people under his rule flashed on this map. Just as he was silently circulating his martial will, modifying the many mountains, lands, and cities to gather dragon qi and cultivate the royal heavenly great art, he suddenly turned his head and looked in the direction of the underground arsenal. So that's how it is! At the next moment, he turned into a stream of sword light, breaking through void space and shooting out in the direction of the underground arsenal. On the flying immortal mountain where the 3 mountains' 4 peaks were, Fang Xinjian, who was observing Fang Yong and the other 2, suddenly lifted his head. Divine light burst out in his eyes, and it was as if he could see the scene outside the divine capital that was several 10,000 lis away. It's time. He abruptly soared into the sky and instantly disappeared into the horizon. Across Middle-earth, Feng Xinjian's countless clones and powers started to curl up and retract. All of them were gathered in the underground arsenal. Even the high-dimensional sword realm, which had originally encompassed the entire sky above the continent, kept on shrinking, turning into an extremely small dot that landed in the direction of the arsenal. Clearly, Feng Xinjian had retracted all of his powers and consciousness and then taken a new step in his martial path. In comparison, the situation in the entire continent, the changes in the 3 mountains' 4 peaks, and the turmoil in the imperial court were not within his consideration. Moreover, with his disappearance and Marie hiding somewhere to train in seclusion, some chaos immediately started to arise. In the palace, Wang's countenance was very grim. Before him were Zhao Yinglan, Fu Daoxian, Wang Tian, and Fang Yong. These few people could be said to be the people who were the most loyal to Feng Xinjian in the entire imperial court. Wang said slowly, "His Majesty has disappeared." "Disappeared?" Zhao Yinglan asked puzzledly. Given His Majesty's martial arts cultivation, he would often go out into the world and control the world. Could it be that he has only left temporarily? Wang shook his head. Usually, even if he leaves, he would leave behind a message. However, this time around, he suddenly disappeared. I've already ordered people to search around in a few places, but there's nothing. Hearing this, the countenances of the few people present changed slightly. They understood very well how important Feng Xian was to the imperial court. It could be said that the current situation in the world, the imperial court's unity and invincibility, was all because of Feng Xian's strong leadership. Once Feng Xian was no longer around, the various regions' military and political forces would probably be in a state of disunity again. Even the Sharp Swords troop and the experts who were equipped with the Universe Night system would gradually split up. Zhao Yinglan frowned and said, "Don't panic first. With His Majesty's martial arts cultivation, it's unlikely that anything will happen to him. However, we still have to seal off the news for now and then send people to search." Countless powers belonging to the imperial court started to operate in secret, and the news of Feng Xian's disappearance was also jointly sealed off by Wang and the others. With the country's operations, traces of Feng Xian's disappearance were discovered very quickly. Chapter 1075. In the arsenal on the outskirts of the divine capital, Zhao Yinglan and the others looked at the slightly distorted atmosphere, and all of them revealed astonished expressions. "When did this happen?" Wang said. "Not long after His Majesty disappeared, an abnormality happened here. With the arsenal as the center, the space within a range of 10 lis was filled up by layers of gang cheese. And the effects of these gang cheese." Eunuch Wang tapped lightly on the layer of gang cheese before him. As a crackling explosion rang out, his finger was flicked away. "All attacks, even just coming into contact with it, will be rebounded. The upper limit is unknown." Hearing Wang's words, Zhao Yinglan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Don't act recklessly for now. Call the Sharp Swords troop over. His Majesty must have his own plans. We just need to guard this place and wait for orders at any moment." Therefore, over the next few days, the imperial court's army started to move in, sealing up the space within a range of 10 lis around the arsenal. There would even be over 2,000 Sharp Swords troops stationed at all times. Zhao Yinglan personally guarded this place day and night, appearing like a loyal subject. There was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. As the time that Feng Xinjian had gone missing continued to increase, all sorts of rumors gradually spread out. Under the fanning of the 3 mountains' 4 peaks, the news that the emperor was seriously ill and wouldn't be around for much longer spread out. The 3 princes in the south seemed to rejoice. It was said that on the night they received the news, Prince Ding invited the officials and generals to a banquet, drinking and making merry for the entire night. However, with the suppression from the Sharp Swords troop and the Universe Knights, there were still no changes to the situation. It was just that under the peaceful imperial court, there were undercurrents seething. Countless people were waiting for the news from that person in the divine capital. On the flying immortal mountain, Qian Huang, Ru Zi, Xiao Shen, Feng Tao, Feng Yuan, and Lori sat together. Right now, the 6 of them had a similar yet slightly different disposition. It was a unique wave that was in harmony with the world, and everything in the world followed. It was the hallmark of great Tao realm experts. After over 1 year, the 6 of them had finally reached the great Tao realm. Right now, their cultivation was flawless, and their battle prowess had reached the pinnacle of their lives. We've finally succeeded. There was a mixture of killing intent and hatred in Feng Tao's eyes. Now that we've all reached the great Tao realm, there's no way for us to advance further on the path of martial arts. Even if that lad Feng Xian and that B***TCH Marie are both at the great Tao realm, it's impossible for them to be a match for the 6 of us. During this period of time, they had not only been breaking through and consolidating their cultivation in the great Tao realm. In order to be able to fight against Feng Xian, they trained together, each displaying their own specialties, and developed a method where the 6 of them worked together. Let's begin. Feng Yuan said hatefully, we've immersed ourselves in cultivation for so long, allowing Feng Xian to be complacent for so long. Now, it's time to let him know that this world ultimately doesn't belong to him. During this period of time, she still maintained contact with her father, Prince Ding. As the 3 mountains' 4 peaks had been holding up, she had to face the doubts of her family. Now, it was finally time to hold his head high. Qian Huang nodded. Right now, this person, who had been the top expert in the orthodox martial arts world for the past 100 years, had a hint of the great Tao circulating in his eyes. Then let's test it out first. As they spoke, Qian Huang and Ru Zi activated their abilities together. In that instant, the sky above the entire flying immortal mountain was filled with flashes of lightning and rumbles of thunder. The entire atmosphere displayed different astronomical phenomena due to the intense changes in radiation, heat, and electromagnetic energy. With this change, everyone present immediately sensed that the gang qis in their bodies kept on rising as if there was no end to them. Concurrently, Xiao Shen had already made his move. His hands shattered abruptly, turning into countless fragments that were like mirror fragments that connected together with the surrounding space. At the next moment, a black hole with a diameter of about 1 meter or so appeared before the 6 of them. Colors soon appeared in the black hole, and it was clearly a natural scenery of high mountains and flowing rivers. To be more precise, it was a stretch of mountainous terrain that was seen from 1,000 lis away. In the center of the field of view was a fortress. Feng Yuan immediately recognized it. It was the 1,000 Mountain Pass that had blocked off the path between the southern borders and the central plains, suppressing Prince Ding and the other 2 outside the pass. Ever since the army had set up camp here, Prince Ding and the others had launched several counterattacks, but they returned in defeat each time. Right now, everyone in the 1,000 Mountain Pass was extremely optimistic about the battle situation. No one felt that the other party would be able to make a comeback. Those rebels in the south probably don't care about fighting anymore, right? A soldier looked at the mountains in the distance, curled his lips, and said, "After all, it's fate that we're here." He turned his head, looked at his companion, and asked, Why aren't you saying anything?" Another soldier lifted his head and looked in the direction of the shattered void space. He frowned and said, "Look in that direction in the sky. Don't you think it's a little strange?" Right now, the 1,000 Mountain Pass was bustling with activity. Countless soldiers stationed here still had no idea that an unprecedented disaster was about to play out above their head. 2,000 black-armored warriors, 100,000 soldiers stationed here, over 300 Disha realm cultivators, as well as those armored warriors who can match up against Tiangang realm experts. As Prince Ding's daughter, Feng Yuan was very clear about this fortress which had been pressing down on Prince Ding's head for the past few months. That's it then. The corners of Fang Yuan's lips curled up into a hint of a cold smile. At the next moment, the 33 paradises were activated at full power, and the spatial distance across the entire Thousand Mountain Pass immediately changed. With the center of the Thousand Mountain Pass as the origin, the space within a range of 1 kilometer contracted intensely at this moment, becoming 1 centimeter in size. As it was a direct change in the spatial distance, they were still connected to the surrounding space. The soldiers stationed in the Thousand Mountain Pass did not sense any changes at all. Even from the outside, they would not be able to see any changes. "Let me do it." At the next moment, a massive fist smashed out toward the void space that Xiao Shun had shattered. The person who had punched out was Fang Tao, who had activated electromagnetic drive. His fist passed through the shattered void space and landed in the sky above the fortress. His fist was intertwined with layers of electric light, and a series of colorful glow would appear wherever it passed by. The air molecules were shattered, opening up the atomic energy in void space. A normal fist had just crossed a distance of 1,000 lis and landed on top of the fortress when it immediately swelled up, turning into a huge mountain that encompassed the entire fortress. Right now, the spatial distance of 1 kilometer in the fortress had become 1 centimeter. It was too small for Fang Tao's fist. When his fist got close to the fortress, it immediately turned into a huge mountain that encompassed the entire fortress. Boom! With a single punch, layers of air currents came pressing down. Before the fist even collided, the entire fortress turned into dust, and all the molecules and atoms in the atmosphere were shattered by this pure violence. Astonishing heat and plasma shock waves burst out explosively, turning into a huge mushroom cloud that soared up into the sky, blasting the area within a range of 10 lis into hell. Looking at the hellish scene 1,000 lis away in the shattered void space, the corners of Fang Tao's lips curled up into a savage smile. "Fang Xian, this is just the beginning." Chapter 1076. Prince Ding brought the last 20 Disha realm experts under his command and arrived before the Thousand Mountain Pass. He had received news from Fang Yuan earlier that the Imperial Court's army had been wiped out, and they could now lead the army to head north. Right now, the many mountains and tall city walls where the Thousand Mountain Pass was located had all disappeared. All that was left before them was a stretch of hell. There were broken walls, wreckage, and melted lands everywhere. The army that had been there had disappeared. Not even a single bug within a range of 10 lis had survived, let alone the Imperial Court's army. At the sight of this scene, Prince Ding laughed out maniacally. "The heavens are on my side. I'm the one who's truly chosen by the heavens. So what if there's an army of 100,000 men? So what if it's an impregnable pass? Ha 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 ha, fight your way up. Fight your way back to the divine capital. I'm going to let that kid, Fang Xian, see who the real son of heaven is." As Xiao Shun and the other 5 made their moves, the southern border's rebel army fought their way back with great force. Faced with the joint forces of 6 great Dao realm cultivators, the army was unable to put up any resistance at all. Qian Huang and Ru Zi provided endless gangqis. Xiao Shun used his ability to shatter void space to lock onto the target across a great distance. Fang Yuan used her 33 paradises to trap the target, and finally, Fang Tao used electromagnetic drive to push out an extremely strong fist force to wipe out the opponent. Lori had yet to make a move, but the Imperial Court's army stationed along the way was easily wiped out by them. It was because the army was unable to defend against this set of attacks, dodge, or retaliate. It was as if Fang Tao was facing a map and using his fingers to wipe out many armies on it. The entire process was extremely easy. This was the terrifying destructive prowess of great Dao realm cultivators joining forces. Prince Ding led the army north. No matter what kind of target they were going to deal with, before the battle started, Fang Tao would wipe out the local armies and generals across space. Even the sharp swords troops and experts who were equipped with the Universe Night system were unable to put up any resistance. They did not even know how they had died. Within half a month, the Imperial Court's army could be said to have been pushed back repeatedly, suffering heavy casualties. Over 200,000 soldiers were wiped out. This was not a crushing defeat. Instead, 200,000 soldiers had really died. Just like that, the rebel army advanced north, reclaiming half of the territory in a short period of time. They fought all the way to the mouth of the Clear River, using the Clear River as the dividing line, facing off against the Imperial Court in the south and north. If it was not because Prince Ding and the others did not have enough generals, soldiers, and officials, it would not be difficult for them to fight their way to the divine capital. Right now, they could only slowly digest these territories that they had taken over. But even so, it was definitely enough to shake the world and terrify the people. This was especially the case when Xiao Shun and the others made their moves. It was no longer possible to tell that they were the attacks of cultivators. It was as if they were heavenly punishment and natural disasters, wiping out many armies. This deepened the people's terror. With the identity of his daughter, Fang Yuan, Prince Ding gradually became the leader of the rebel army. He even vaguely had the disposition of a true dragon that everyone in the world would respond to. I have decided to ascend the throne half a month later. Prince Ding stroked his beard and said proudly. An old official anxiously came out to dissuade him. Since ancient times, how could there be a successful emperor who ascended the throne before unifying the world? Wasn't this destroying one's own righteousness and reputation? But there were even more flattering people who stood up to flatter him, making Prince Ding laugh out loud. All right, then we'll ascend the throne half a month later. This way, we'll have a legitimate reason to do things. We'll let those rebels in the north see who's the legitimate one. Prince Ding had already decided to get his daughter to perform heavenly punishment on the imperial court half a month later. Countless old officials felt disappointed with Prince Ding's way of doing things. However, this was actually very normal. The Great Jin dynasty had been established for 300 years, and there were too many profligates and useless people in the royal family. If it was not because Prince Ding was fond of grandiose achievements and had a bad temper, how could he have been sent to the southern borders by the late emperor? It was also because of their incompetence that the late emperor had allowed Fang Xian and the other useless uncles to survive. Right now, on the flying immortal mountain, Xiao Shun performed the ability to shatter void space and observe the direction of the arsenal outside the divine capital. Ever since Jiuqian activated her gang qis to encompass the entire arsenal, the density of the gang qis on the surface and underground kept on increasing. With the vacuum engine, it was almost possible to draw out zero-point vacuum energy endlessly from void space. It was a ubiquitous and endless energy source. Jiuqian's gang qis were almost endless as well, and they would never be depleted completely. Looking down from the sky, the arsenal seemed to be encompassed by a layer of seemingly material clouds. Xiao Shun was unable to get close even after trying many times, let alone seeing it. Even if he performed the ability to shatter void space and entered inside, he would only see endless gang qis each time he opened up the space. This Fang Xian. What on earth is he doing? Xiao Shun frowned as he looked at the gang qis that were so thick that they were still continuously increasing in density. His eyes were filled with puzzlement. Beside him, the other 5 great Dao realm cultivators also wore expressions of surprise and bewilderment. Although the rebel army had been on a winning streak for the past half a month, Xiao Shun and the others understood that as long as Fang Xian and Marie were still around, it would be meaningless no matter how many deaths the imperial court's army suffered. However, over the past half a month, no matter how much they killed the imperial court's army, Fang Xian and Marie did not make a move. It was as if they did not care about the army's survival at all. Later on, they also confirmed the news that for some unknown reason, Fang Xian had been hiding in the secret factory in the divine capital's outskirts since over half a month ago. Then endless gang cheese encompassed the entire surface and underground, preventing anyone from taking a step in. As time passed by, an intense sense of threat kept on rising in their hearts, as if telling them that something bad was about to happen. This was a treatment that only heaven-blessed cultivators and great Tao realm cultivators would receive. Their consciousness powers were connected to the world, and they would be able to foresee future dangers. It was just like how Xiao Shun had experienced this feeling when he was fighting against the prince. When he was watching Blood Sea and Fang Xinjian's battle, he had also experienced this feeling. Today, this sense of threat had almost reached an extreme, and the surrounding air kept on piercing them like needles. The target was extremely clear. It was in the divine capital, in that secret factory, and under the layers of gang cheese. Something extremely terrifying was about to be born. No matter what Fang Xian is up to, we must stop him, Xiao Shun said calmly as he looked at the scene 10,000 lis away. Xiao Shun looked at the scene that was 10,000 lis away and said calmly, even an army of several 100,000 men and half of the country weren't able to lure him out. What he's preparing is definitely no small matter. Then let's make our move. Fang Yuan revealed a hint of a brutal smile. I've used the 33 paradises to change the distance in the surroundings of the entire flying immortal mountain. If they wish to attack, they'll have to cross a distance of millions and millions of lis. It's still the 5 of us who will take action first. Lori, you'll stay at the back, Fang Tao said to Lori. Chapter 1077. Lori's eyes were tightly shut, and streams of red light kept on emitting out from his eyelashes. Lori's crimson blood mystic light fiend had been accumulating power continuously since half a month ago. With the reinforcement from Qian Huang and Ru Zi, the speed at which his crimson blood mystic light fiend accumulated power was very fast. Right now, he did not even dare to open his eyes. It was because the power contained within had completely surpassed the limits of what he could control. Once it was activated, it would probably be a full power attack. As for how far the prowess of this crimson blood mystic light fiend could reach, even he himself did not know. Therefore, Lori had always been treated as a secret weapon. Unless Fang Xian appeared, they would not let Lori activate it. In the outskirts of the divine capital, Zhao Yinglan and the others were still guarding there. The wrinkles on Wang's face were almost squeezed together. Clearly, the recent situation in the world made him extremely worried. Right now, all of them were looking at the layers of stacking gang cheese, anticipating the Emperor's return. The situation in the south is urgent. To think that that traitor Prince Ding is going to risk the world to ascend the throne next month. Zhao Yinglan clenched her fists, and a hint of cold gleam flashed in her eyes. Right now, Fang Xian was not around. Not only was he unable to unleash his martial prowess, but there was also no one in the world who had the authority to mobilize the military forces. Zhao Yinglan did not even have the authority to lead her subordinates to the south to fend off the enemies. If there's really no other way, I can only head south alone, Zhao Yinglan said. Wang let out a sigh. He looked at the layers of gang cheese, and the worry in his heart grew even stronger. Just then, the sky suddenly turned dark, and the entire land seemed to be encompassed by a stretch of shadows. Zhao Yinglan and the others raised their heads and looked over. Their gazes immediately changed. A massive object that was like a huge mountain came pressing down with endless strong gales. Wherever it passed by, the atmosphere would start to seethe, and the atoms and molecules would collide incessantly, producing a series of explosions. The sharp swords troops in the surroundings immediately reacted, raising their guns and shooting toward the sky. However, even the armor-piercing bullets that were shot out at 5 times the speed of sound were completely ineffective against the attack before them. Before the bullets could even get close, they were overturned by the nuclear explosions caused by the fist. At the same time that the sharp swords troop took action, Zhao Yinglan and Wang also took action. The crystals on their bodies lit up, and at the next moment, they were wrapped up by exoskeleton armors. At the same time, the armor on Wang's shoulder opened up, and the high-energy particle cannon fired directly. It turned into a beam of light that shot straight into the sky, smashing ruthlessly into Feng Tao's fist in the sky. On Zhao Yinglan's shoulders, a crystal-like substance that looked like cannon muzzles also appeared. It was the strongest weapon of the Universe Night System's upgraded version, the antimatter cannon. Almost at the same instant Feng Tao made his move, Zhao Yinglan sensed how terrifying this punch was. Faced with the pressure that felt as if the entire sky was pressing down, she immediately activated her strongest weapon. The energy released by each gram of antimatter was an astronomical figure. When Zhao Yinglan activated the antimatter cannon, drawing out the antimatter in the antimatter engine and combining it with matter to form a cannon attack, piercing light soared into the sky, almost instantly covering up the entire sky. This was the first time Zhao Yinglan had activated such a terrifying killing weapon. She was instantly stunned by its prowess. Wherever the light passed by, all matter would be annihilated. The process of annihilation caused a tremendous amount of energy to be released, forming piercing white light that illuminated the sky. The two waves of cannon attacks merged together, bringing along stacking layers of explosions and pressing down toward the sky. Feng Tao, who was on the other side of the shattered void space, was also startled. The fist force that was driven by electromagnetic force was forced back, and even his fist felt like it was starting to melt. "Help me!" There was no need for him to say anything. Xiao Shun and Feng Yuan, who were next to him, had already taken action. Firstly, the distance in space was stretched out. The distance of 1 centimeter was pulled to 100 million kilometers, and the light was stuck at 1 centimeter, unable to pass through. Then countless light kept on plunging into this 1 centimeter heavenly mote. From the outside, it was as if all the cannon attack's light had turned into a circular pancake that was 1 centimeter thick. Then it was Shaoxin's shattering void space. The entire circular pancake slowly shattered and was scattered to various locations in the world, exploding. It was unknown how many natural and man-made disasters were created, but it managed to fend off this attack. What a good armor! Feng Tao let out a cold snort, as if he was infuriated that he had been obstructed by a Tiangang realm cultivator. He activated his electromagnetic force at full power, and electricity circled around his fist, bringing along a thunderous force as it continued to press down. Zhao Yinglan and Feng Yuan were unable to continuously release their cannon attack. Faced with the violent power that descended from the sky, their countenances were filled with despair. However, before Feng Tao's fist came into contact with them, it first came into contact with the gang cheese that encompassed the factory and Jiuqian's gang cheese. The young female android, who was deep underground, opened her eyes abruptly, and Feng Xinjian's instructions flashed in her mind. "Invaders! Kill all of them!" At the next moment, the gang cheese that encompassed the factory retaliated. The young female android kept on releasing the gang cheese that had been stored for half a month, and they kept on gushing out toward Feng Tao's fist. If one were to say that Feng Tao's fist came pressing down explosively at the beginning, it would feel as if he had punched onto water. Then it would feel as if he had punched onto ice, and then it would feel as if he was an ordinary person punching onto cement. After Feng Tao's fist was temporarily fended off, the young female android had already arrived before his fist with a flash. She also punched out and collided against Feng Tao's fist. Right now, with the assistance from the 33 paradises, Feng Tao's fist came pressing down like the heavens were collapsing and the earth was sinking. Jiuqian's fair and delicate fist was like an ant dashing toward an elephant. However, the effect of this punch was astonishing. At the instant the two fists came into contact, Jiuqian's entire body started to tremble at a high speed. The phase transfer armor on the surface of her body had been activated. The power from Fong Tao's punch was completely converted into tremors and then turned into heat energy, which was then absorbed into Jiuqian's body. Following that, the terrifying power, which was a mixture of Fong Tao's and Jiuqian's punches, exploded out from Jiuqian's fair and tender fist and lashed out fiercely against Fong Tao's fist. Fong Tao only felt that his fist was getting lighter and then heavier. Boom! It was as if he had smashed a mountain with a single punch. Amidst the splattering blood, Fong Tao's entire palm and even his arm started to shatter. He let out a stifled snort and pulled back his palm. However, he discovered that his palm was a bloody mess, with his skin and flesh lacerated. It was now a pool of rotten flesh. Who's there? However, at the next moment, a fair and tender palm crossed over Xiao Shun's shattered void space and grabbed onto his head. Amidst Fong Tao's panic, Xiao Shun had already cut off the shattered void space, and his fair and tender arm was slashed into pieces by the closed space. Fong Tao let out a breath, looked at the broken arm that was still grabbing onto his head, and said, "Who on earth is this woman? And where did this expert come from?" However, before he could finish saying this, the broken arm exerted force once again. As a crackling explosive sound rang out, Fong Tao's skull, brain, facial bones, and eyeballs were all crushed, turning into a pool of blood that splattered onto the ground. Chapter 1078. The remnant bloodstains on the ground slowly gathered together, once again forming a disgusting bloody face. It was Fong Tao's appearance. Cultivators who had advanced to the great Tao realm would have their consciousness connected with the world's consciousness. They could already exist independently from their physical bodies, just like Blood Sea back then. Even if their physical bodies were shattered, they would still be able to survive. Therefore, although Jiuqian's attack had shattered Fong Tao's body, she had not really killed him. However, this attack still roused Fong Tao's fury. His body turned into a mud man formed from blood and mud as he bellowed, "Damn it! I'm going to kill her!" "Who on earth is that woman?" Xiao Shun asked puzzledly. Where did this expert pop out from? Fong Yuan squatted down and looked at the remnant arm on the ground. She said puzzledly, "This arm doesn't seem like a human arm." Jiuqian's attack earlier had astonished them fiercely. That majestic gang cheese, the technique to absorb attacks, and the retaliating prowess, all of them were sharp and terrifying. If it was not because they had the defense of shattering void space, and the 33 levels of heaven, Fong Tao might really be beaten to death if he were to continue fighting alone. "What should we do? This woman probably won't be easy to deal with," Lori said slowly. Fong Tao said furiously, "Of course we can't let her off. Continue attacking. Can it be that the 6 of us can't deal with her? There's also Fong Xian and Marie. Who knows when they'll make a move?" "Then I'll be the one to attack," Lori said. "No, it's still too early." "Why not? With Lori's Crimson Blood Mystic Light Fiend, we can accumulate power time and time again to get rid of her. As for defense, with my 33 levels of heaven and your shattering void space, she won't be able to attack us." The 6 people from the 3 mountains' 4 peaks started arguing. In the underground arsenal, Jiuqian looked at her missing arm and was slightly stunned. "I've lost connection with the arm, I've lost connection with the neutron communication device." Activating the regeneration module, after ascertaining that she could no longer wave her arm, Jiuqian immediately activated the regeneration module in her body. A tremendous amount of silver liquid metal gushed out from the area where it had been severed. Within a short period of time, it once again formed the appearance of her arm. Then, the arm formed from the silver metal changed into a few colors consecutively. The skin turned into a series of waves, and it once again returned to its original fair and smooth skin. Just then, in the sky that was far away from the young female android's sensory range, a black hole suddenly cracked open. It was Xiao Shun's shattered space technique. The next moment, the spatial distance of the entire factory changed once again. It was as if it had been compressed into a single point and was aimed at by the black hole. Traces of scarlet light shone out from the black hole. Clearly, at the end of the argument, Xiao Shun and the others still decided to let Lori take action. The red ray cannon formed by the condensation of high-energy photons descended from the sky, directly bursting out from the black hole, completely covering the compressed small point of the underground arsenal. The crimson blood mystic light fiend of this strike seemed to have gathered all the sunlight in the entire world onto a single point. Everywhere it passed, the atmosphere boiled and formed into numerous shocking storms that surged towards the surroundings. The temperature of the entire divine capital started to rise rapidly. Even the ground started to shatter and crack, and a tremendous amount of water was vaporized. The scorching hurricane roared and uprooted all the trees on the ground. Most of the troops stationed nearby were directly blown into the sky, and then their bodies were directly torn apart by the high temperature and blade-like storm. Only a small number of soldiers who were equipped with exoskeleton armors managed to survive. The targets who were hit head-on were in an even worse state. The gang cheese layer that Jiuqian had accumulated above the entire arsenal started to dissipate almost at the very first instant. The scarlet light that pierced through the world was like an indestructible sharp sword, easily piercing through the layers of gang cheese like piercing through cheese. The invisible gang cheese trembled intensely and swelled up. They kept on being repelled by the explosions caused by the crimson blood mystic light fiend, and over half of the underground arsenal was instantly vaporized. Then it clashed head-on with Jiuqian, who had dashed out. The young female android reacted almost at the first 0.0001 second after being attacked. However, the destructive prowess of the crimson blood mystic light fiend, which had been accumulating for over half a month, was far too strong. Not only did it cause intense and irreversible damage to the surroundings, but it also instantly vaporized half of the underground arsenal. The arms of the young female android, who had collided with the crimson blood mystic light fiend, trembled, and the phase transfer armor was fully activated. The endless crimson blood mystic light fiend attacks struck her body, but they were all turned into her heat energy. However, how could Xiao Shun and the others allow her to fend off this wave of attacks so easily? A black hole opened up in Jiuqian's body, and Fang Tao's fist, which brought along a power that could create a great canyon that was several tens of kilometers long, smashed out from the shattered void space and exploded in Jiuqian's body. Boom! An explosion rang out, and countless components in the young female android's body, including the vacuum engine, were severely damaged. She was no longer able to withstand the damage from the crimson blood mystic light fiend, and she was engulfed by the scarlet-red light together with the underground arsenal. This attack might not be able to really kill Jiuqian, but it was sufficient to wipe out the entire underground arsenal. The young female android's pupils contracted abruptly. As the vacuum engine shattered, astonishing gang cheese burst out. It was as if a white hole that kept on shooting out matter had opened up. She opened her mouth, and a stretch of nothingness that represented absolute darkness slowly extended out from her mouth. Prepare to fire the core cooling cannon 3.2 back then, in order to increase the prowess of the androids. Fang Xinjian had not only used the original version of the androids from the Divine Emperor's blueprint. Other than the vacuum engine, phase transfer armor, liquid metal regeneration model, and other super-technological weapons, he had also added an ultimate weapon called the core cooling cannon. However, just as the young female android was about to announce the end of the world, a stream of golden light flashed before her, slashing the scarlet-red light that descended from the sky into two. A slender figure, who was dressed in royal robes and had a crown on his head, was standing before her. He emitted a domineering aura that made one submit to him uncontrollably. He had also completely fended off the crimson blood mystic light fiend with a single move. Prince turned his head, and when his cold face looked at Jiuqian, he broke into a hint of a smile. "Little girl, don't destroy the world so easily." Then she turned to look at the piercing red light in the sky and said coldly, "Scram." At the next moment, a burst of golden light soared up, and the black heavenly great palm imprint slapped out across space, instantly pushing back the crimson blood mystic light fiend. Simultaneously, as Prince let out a soft bellow, Xiao Shun and the other 5 people, who were on the 3 mountains 4 peaks, which were under the protection of the 33 paradises, were crushed into dust by a domineering palm force across space. The distance was even greater than the distance between the Sun and Earth. An attack that was launched across a distance of 100 million lis was completed in an instant. This was no longer something that could be achieved with a simple light speed attack or spatial translocation. This was a high-dimensional attack. Chapter 1079. Jiuqian looked at Prince, who had descended from the sky, in a daze. The darkness in her mouth did not stop and continued to spread out. To her, the prince before her was clearly an existence that was even more dangerous than the earlier attack. However, seeing Jiuqian's actions, Prince did not try to persuade her further. He merely smiled and shook his head. "It's really hard to explain to you." Fang Xinjian then sent out a palm strike, and the young female android trembled across space. She was instantly slapped out several 10,000 kilometers away. Although Jiuqian had been pushed so far away through spatial translocation, she did not hesitate at all. With a dash, she turned into a stream of light and shot out in the direction of the munitions factory. Protect the munitions factory and prevent outsiders from entering. This was the order that she had received. As long as she could still move, she would do everything she could to accomplish this. After pushing Jiuqian back for now, Prince raised his head and looked toward the sky again. He saw that the crimson blood mystic light fiend, which he had pushed back earlier, had come pressing down once again. It was as if the sky was burning, bringing along seething blood-colored light. Judging by its prowess, it seemed as if it was going to destroy the entire surface of Jing region. Prince looked at the attacks descending from the sky and said coldly, "To think that a bunch of monkeys would dare to have designs on a tiger? Fang Xinjian, I'll help you deal with these pieces of trash today. After you come out from your seclusion, we'll have a showdown." On the 3 mountains 4 peaks, the 6 great Dao realm cultivators who had been smashed into meat paste by Prince's attack struggled and turned into 6 streams of blood shadows. Each of them circulated their martial powers to the limit. "It's Marie. Other than Fang Yuan, everyone attack at full power. Fang Yuan, don't let her attack us again." In that instant, Fang Yuan's 33 paradises went through a change once again. She, who had turned into a blood shadow, had a savage expression, and her figure swayed. She was like a demon that had escaped from hell. Simultaneously, apart from the many stretches of space that she had set up on the entire flying immortal mountain, many barriers that spanned over 100 million kilometers were twisted out with the 6 of them as the center. Each meter represented a distance of over 1 million kilometers. Similar defensive spaces were stacked up in layers, seeming endless. Even the speed of light was unable to penetrate this space in a short period of time. It became a dot of light, and between the dots was absolute darkness. On the other side, Qian Huang and Ru Zi also unleashed their full power. Boundless Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis surged out from the void in all directions and entered the bodies of the 6 people present, continuously increasing and replenishing their strength. Xiao Shun, Lori, and Fang Tao were the main attackers. Lori's crimson blood mystic light fiend covered the sky and earth as it pressed forward as a frontal attack. Xiao Shun and Fang Tao worked together. Streams of space shattered around the prince, and there were even countless black cracks appearing in the prince's body. The same scene appeared before Fang Tao. At this moment, Fang Tao could directly attack the prince's entire body, both inside and outside. Streams of electricity appeared on Fang Tao's body, and he unleashed 120% of his electromagnetic drive's prowess. The ground under his feet and the atmosphere around him started to shatter inch by inch. He clenched his hands into fists, and waves of fist force that could explode all chemical bonds and unleash a myriad of energies rose up from his hands. Right now, the powers that the six of them unleashed concurrently not only had the ability to wipe out any cultivator, city, or even country in this world, but they also did not fear any attacks that they knew of. It was because even the Crimson Blood Mystic Light Fiend, which Lori had accumulated for over half a month, would have its prowess depleted by over 99% after going through the several billion kilometers set up by the 33 paradises. However, just as the six of them made all the preparations for battle and unleashed all of their battle prowess, the prince crossed the 33 paradises domain and appeared before them. To be able to send her conjured physique across a distance of several billion kilometers was no longer something that spatial translocation could achieve. It was because it was impossible for her martial will to instantly detect such a great distance. The only reason why the prince was able to do this was because she had completely grasped the power of high-dimensional attack. A pair of fair and tender feet stepped lightly on the flying Immortal Mountain's rocks. The prince's yellow robes fluttered, and she was like a female empress who ruled over a myriad of space-time and grasped destructive powers. She raised her head high, revealing her pink neck, and squinted at the six people in front of her. "I can use you guys to test out my new move." This time around, the prince had done two things in her seclusion. The first was to integrate the Royal Heavenly Great Art and high-dimensional sword arts, creating a neo-martial technique that belonged to her, the Son of Heaven's sword manipulation art. The second was to use a hint of her consciousness to reincarnate into a female infant's body. It was just like how she had reincarnated into Maria back then. She performed this reincarnation technique once again. However, this time around, it was not for recuperation but to deal with enemies. By reincarnating and accelerating her growth, the prince would have the identity of a native of this world and would no longer be restricted by the attacks of the world's consciousness. She tapped out with a finger and activated the Son of Heaven's sword manipulation art. A stream of golden sword light exploded in void space, and Fong Tao's blood shadow shattered once again. He was instantly vaporized completely by a gush of invisible sword chi. The Son of Heaven's sword manipulation art's basic ability was to integrate the Royal Heavenly Great Art's terrifying powers and the high-dimensional attacks of high-dimensional sword art. With just a single move, Fong Tao was instantly killed. With the connection of her reincarnated body, the prince would not receive any backlash from the world's consciousness. Lori turned his head, and the Crimson Blood Mystic Light Fiend drowned the prince's body. However, at the next moment, with a flash of sword light, the Crimson Blood Mystic Light Fiend light that filled up the sky shattered and dissipated into void space. The Son of Heaven's sword manipulation art circulates good fortune. The second characteristic of the Son of Heaven's sword manipulation art was that its unique sword force contained the prince's domineering will. It could even suppress and repel powers of various natures, including the four fundamental forces. Looking at the few people before him, the prince said calmly, "I wasn't interested in killing you guys in the first place. However, I don't wish for anyone to disturb my battle with Fong Xinjian." In that instant, Lori was engulfed by the golden sword light and disappeared without a trace. "Fong Xinjian? You're talking about Fong Xian? You guys want to fight it out?" Xiao Shen said in disbelief. "That's right." A hint of pride flashed in the prince's eyes. "In this world, other than him, who else is worthy of being my opponent?" Swoosh swoosh. With two streams of sword light, Qian Huang and Ru Zi were also vaporized by the sword cheese. Seeing how the team he had painstakingly created were killed so easily, the corners of Xiao Shen's lips curled up into a hint of bitterness. He felt that his earlier actions were extremely laughable. "Then why did you wait until now to make a move? Are you watching a joke?" Ha 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 ha, in your eyes, are our actions just like a joke? Xiao Shen's countenance was extremely grim. He had not expected that even without Fang Xian making a move, just Marie's martial prowess alone was already so unstoppable. She was over 100 times stronger than when he had first met her. Chapter 1080. A Joke. The prince shook his head, raised his brows slightly, and said, "You guys aren't funny." As he spoke, the golden sword cheese tore Xiao Shen apart layer by layer. This great Dao realm expert did not even manage to hold on for a single breath before a large part of him was vaporized. However, before he died, a hint of calmness flashed on Xiao Shen's face. He looked at the prince's face and sighed, "It's better to die in your hands than to die in Fang Xian's hands." Humph! The prince let out a cold snort and vaporized Xiao Shen completely. On the other side, when Fang Yuan saw her companions being killed so easily, there was only horror and fear left on her face. Terror kept on engulfing her heart, causing her body to be unable to move at all. Looking at the prince's gaze, Fang Yuan quickly said, I surrender. I surrender." Surrender? The prince's gaze scanned Fang Yuan from head to toe. At the next moment, he appeared before her with a flash. He put out a finger and placed it on Fang Yuan's chin, lifting it up slightly and taking a closer look at her appearance. "You can be considered to have some good looks." Fang Yuan kept on trembling nervously. She looked like a little chick that had been tied up by a huge python, not daring to move at all. Hearing the prince's words, she forced herself to say, I'm Prince Ding's daughter. I can get my father to lead the entire 6 regions in the south and submit to the imperial court." Submit to the imperial court? Why do you want to submit to the imperial court? The prince smiled, exuding endless dominance and charm. Even Fang Yuan, who was also a female, was slightly dazed. The prince's martial will instantly extended out, appearing in every corner of the flying immortal mountain with a flash. "There are some experts. Then I'll take down the 3 mountains' 4 peaks first." Just as the prince single-handedly defeated the entire 3 mountains' 4 peaks, the Prince Ding residence was decorated with lanterns and colored banners, leading a befuddled life. With the powers of Xiao Shen and the other 5 great Dao realm experts, Prince Ding has become the only force in the world that can go up against the imperial court while guarding the 6 regions of Middle-earth. During this period of time, he had taken in countless civil and military officials who had come to seek refuge, and his power was expanding rapidly. However, Prince Ding himself did not have the qualifications to be an emperor. Moreover, he was jealous of the talented and liked to promote those who needed to flatter him. He also raised taxes, forcibly conscripted the people, and even sent his subordinates to plunder beauties, causing the entire 6 provinces to be in a foul atmosphere. The people's grievances were boiling, and all the women under the age of 40 hid at home and did not dare to go out. These few days, Prince Ding held a banquet in the prince's residence every day and was immersed in endless joy. "Your Majesty is skilled in both literature and martial arts, and you have won the hearts of the people. Soon, you will unify the world and save the country from danger. You are truly comparable to the ancient Saint Emperor." Nonsense. How could the ancient god emperors compare to His Majesty's achievements? Didn't the demon sect, which had pacified the 4 seas and wiped out the rebels, and which even the previous emperors were helpless against over the past 300 years, also retreat in defeat? That's right, that's right. Fang Xian was bewitched by the demon sect's demonic lady. If it wasn't for His Majesty's brilliance and prowess, the entire world would probably have to suffer at the hands of the demon sect. The great cause of saving the people of the world and turning the situation around, with heavenly punishment landing on the rebels in every battle, can be said to be conforming to the will of the heavens. It's really unprecedented. Prince Ding sat on the throne that had just been ordered. There were 2 beauties on his left and right. One of them was massaging his back and legs, while the other was feeding him wine and meat. As he listened to the official's flattery, he felt elated. In the past, the previous emperor had always been very wary of his three brothers in the south. Ever since Prince Ding came to the southern borders, not only did he not have any power or influence, but even the gold and silver that the imperial court gave him every year had been embezzled. No one in the southern borders' imperial court had ever thought highly of him. At most, they would only think highly of the Tiangang realm expert under him, Nong Bai. As for Prince Ding himself, no one had ever thought highly of him. Therefore, during the years he had been in the southern borders, he could be said to have lived an extremely aggrieved life. It was only when the previous emperor passed away and war broke out in the world that he gradually gathered his troops and occupied a region with Nong Bai's assistance. However, these achievements were quickly wiped out by the imperial court's army, and his subordinates kept on leaving him. It was only when Xiao Shun and the others gathered the powers of 6 great Dao realm experts that they managed to conquer half of the region with great ease, venting out all the grievances in their hearts. When the banquet reached its climax, 2 beautiful figures stepped into the hall and arrived at the banquet. The 2 people who had come were Prince and Fang Yuan. Right now, Prince had changed into a set of long robes with alternating red and white stripes, and the domineering aura he exuded was also slightly restrained. Instead, he exuded an astonishing charm, attracting the gazes of everyone present the moment he appeared. Right now, Fang Yuan was following behind him, looking more like a maid. There was no hint of the aura of a great Dao realm expert, and she was just like an ordinary person. However, Prince Ding was still somewhat familiar with his daughter. Although he was astonished by Prince's beauty, Prince Ding still looked at Fang Yuan first and asked, "What's wrong, Yuaner? Why have you suddenly come to your father's place? Is this beauty a senior from the 3 mountains 4 peaks?" Fang Yuan's countenance changed, and she glared fiercely at Prince Ding before saying, "Father, this is the Imperial Court's General Marie. This time around, she's here specially to take over the 6 regions in the south." The moment she said this, the countenances of everyone present changed drastically. Prince Ding stood up abruptly and bellowed furiously, "Be ****! Do you know what you're saying?" A few other officials and generals immediately stepped out and rebuked furiously, "Audacious renegade! Do you know who you're talking to? The Imperial Court's Marie? Haha, the Imperial Court's army is being pushed back repeatedly. Why did they send a woman like you to fight?" Although most of the generals and officials present were people who needed to suck up to the Imperial Court, there was no lack of capable or intelligent people. Some of them had already retreated secretly after seeing Fang Yuan and the prince, planning to slip away. After the prince and Fang Yuan arrived, a large number of guards and experts rushed over very quickly. Among them, there was no lack of Disha realm experts. These Disha realm experts had all joined Prince Ding's side after he gained power. Right now, they were eager to make contributions and were all very motivated. However, the prince did not plan on wasting time with them. With a light stomp, a golden wave gushed out from under her feet. In the blink of an eye, it gushed out in all directions. Wherever it passed by, all the cultivators would faint, regardless of their cultivation realm. In the blink of an eye, this golden wave encompassed the entire city, knocking out all the cultivators at the Xiantian realm and above. Looking at the people who had fallen to the ground, Prince Ding's countenance turned extremely grim. Fang Yuan immediately sent a voice transmission, "Father, quickly surrender. She has already defeated Xiao Shun and the others and taken over the entire 3 mountains 4 peaks." Hearing this, Prince Ding's legs turned limp, and he dropped to the ground, shouting, I surrender." Chapter 1081. Looking at how Prince Ding was trying to get into her good books, the prince finally revealed a hint of a smile. "Do you know that you're like a pug right now?" Prince Ding's countenance changed, and at the next moment, he suddenly barked. "Woof woof woof! Woof woof woof!" As Prince Ding crawled, he started barking like a dog. The prince laughed out loud. Good dog, good dog. Since you're so obedient, so what if I spare your life? With the full support of the 3 mountains' 4 peaks, Fang Yuan and Prince Ding, as well as the prince's own abilities and means, the prince spent over half a month to gain control over the entire 6 regions in the south after establishing her prowess and expressing goodwill. These 6 regions were not only her influence, but they also provided her with the dragon chi that the Son of Heaven's sword manipulation art required. Standing on the southern shore of the Qing River, the prince's red robes fluttered loudly under the strong gales. It was as if she was a burning cloud of fire. She looked toward the sky in the north. Her eyes seemed to be able to pierce through void space, looking in the direction of the divine capital and the munitions factories. Right now we each have half in the north and the south. This can be considered fair. I only hope that you won't disappoint me after you come out from your seclusion. Very soon, news of the imperial court's great General Marie heading south alone to reclaim the 6 regions that were in chaos and proclaiming herself as the ruler spread throughout the world. The world was immediately shaken, and the imperial court was astonished. However, before the people of the world could digest this astonishing piece of news, even more astonishing news spread out. Marie had set up a battle with the Emperor, Fang Xian, to be held 1 month later. The location would be above the Goddess Gorge in the middle section of the Qing River. Within a short period of time, the entire world was in an uproar because of this battle. Although the imperial court and Fang Xian had yet to give a clear reply, countless people were already beginning to look forward to this battle. Regardless of whether it was the imperial court or the rebel armies, both of them were facing each other from the north and the south. They had temporarily stopped fighting, as if waiting for the outcome of this great battle. The prince looked at the seething river under her feet and suddenly laughed out loud. She grabbed out with her hand, and a wine gourd was grabbed across space. Then, with a tremble of her hand, the royal wine in the wine gourd turned into a silver line and shot into her mouth. After drinking a few mouthfuls, she shook her head and said, "It's okay." Although the royal wine in his hand was the best wine that could be found in the entire 6 southern regions, it was still lacking to the prince who had once ruled over countless countries and enjoyed countless fine wines and delicacies. Fang Yuan immediately lowered her head and said, "Your Majesty, please forgive me. After I return, I'll immediately give the order to search for fine wine." "Forget it. This isn't a beauty that can be found with a simple search. Why waste people's money?" The prince drank the last mouthful of imperial wine and casually threw the wine gourd into the surging river. Fang Yuan said, "His Majesty is benevolent." "Benevolence? You hate me to death, don't you?" As if to enjoy the stimulation of alcohol, Prince adjusted his body, and 2 traces of red flashed across his fair cheek. He smiled and said, "Not only do you hate me to death, but you also hope that Fang Xinjian can kill me, right? Your subject doesn't dare." Fang Yuan immediately dropped to her knees, wearing a terrified expression. The prince laughed and said, "I'm not someone who will casually punish someone based on their words. You're just thinking about it, and I won't kill you. However, if you hope that Fang Xinjian can kill me, there's a slight possibility." During this period of interaction, Fang Yuan knew that the Fang Xinjian whom Fang Yuan was referring to was Fang Xian. She immediately said, "Your Majesty's martial arts are top-notch and unparalleled in the world. How can people like Fang Xian be a match for you? Many people in the world think this way. Could it be that you think the same?" The prince turned to look at Fang Yuan and said, "Although I'm unwilling to admit it, Fang Xinjian's aptitude is above mine. If it wasn't because I've been cultivating for a longer period of time than him, I'd have lost long ago. However, it won't be that easy for him to defeat me." As he spoke, the prince had already pulled Fang Yuan into his embrace. This top-notch cultivator, who had reached the great Tao realm and had the ability to change the world's situation, was currently like a weak little bunny before the prince. She did not dare to move at all and merely closed her eyes. Her face was flushed red, as if she was silently accepting her fate. At the next moment, the prince laughed out loud and loosened his grip, letting go of Feng Yuan. Feng Yuan rose into the air, and her red robes fluttered in the wind. It was as if she only wanted to fly out of the 9 heavens. Feng Xinjian, don't disappoint me. Just as the prince was preparing for his arranged battle with Feng Xinjian, at the weapon factory outside the divine capital, over half of the weapon factory had been vaporized by the crimson blood mystic light fiend. However, after over half a month had passed, under the work of the densely packed mechanical cuttlefish, most of it had been rebuilt. Jiuqian stood in void space and looked at the weapon factory that was still being rebuilt. The prince's silhouette suddenly appeared in her mind. That person! A series of ripples appeared on her skin, and she was dressed in the same royal robe that the prince had been wearing back then. Looking at the clothes she was wearing, the young female android lowered her head. No one knew what she was thinking about. Logically speaking, the prince had entered the vicinity of the weapon factory. Based on Feng Xinjian's orders, she should treat him as an absolute enemy. However, for reasons unknown to Jiuqian herself, the prince's silhouette appeared in her mind, and a yearning rose in her heart. In the deepest part of the underground weapon factory, Feng Xinjian's martial arts cultivation had reached a critical juncture. The celestial eradication sword technique, heart sword path, high-dimensional sword arts, and royal heavenly great art are the strongest martial arts I've learned. The ones that are slightly weaker are the void-shattering technique, 33 paradises, electromagnetic drive, and crimson blood mystic light fiend that I've learned in this world. Based on this world's consciousness, the comprehension of the heaven-blessed cultivators, and the Tiangang and Disha system, I've created this 9 lives helix. 9 was the extreme of numbers, and 9 lives represented limitlessness. The helix was the path that led everything to an extreme, to the source or to the source. The 9 lives helix that Feng Xinjian had created referred to this world's consciousness process of using the Tiangang and Disha system, as well as the heaven-blessed cultivators to reincarnate and recuperate. However, he had also added his various understandings into it, forming a world-shaking martial art. High-dimensional sword arts are already the pinnacle of my current techniques, but if I wish to win against experts of the same level as me, I'll need greater power. Opposite Feng Xinjian, there were 3 Feng Xinjian who looked exactly the same as him sitting cross-legged. The only difference was that these 3 Feng Xinjian's bodies were flashing with different glows. One of them had 4 streams of sword light flashing to and fro behind him, seeming to form a sword ring that kept on spinning. Another person's body appeared intermittently, seeming to exist yet not exist at the same time. It gave off a blurry and illusory feeling. The last person exuded an astonishing imperial tyrannical aura. It was as if he was an emperor who ruled over the mortal world, and he also exuded waves of golden glow. Looking at the 3 people before him, Feng Xinjian sent out a single thought, and the 4 figures seemed to be wrapped up in a helix, becoming increasingly indistinct. Chapter 1082. The 9 lives helix that Feng Xinjian created imitated the structure of this world's will, the heaven-blessed cultivators, and the Tiangang and Disha system. He separated each of his martial arts and formed a new clone. It was a little similar to the many heaven-blessed cultivators. Each martial art was a new martial life form. They existed at the same time and were connected to each other, yet they didn't interfere with each other. They were like the shadows of an object in different directions. This meant that he would usually appear as a martial life form while the other martial life forms cultivated in the high-dimensional world. This was like the so-called projection. When the sun shone on the human body, the shadow that was produced would only reveal a portion of the truth. The shadow would never be able to reveal the true appearance of the original body. It was the same for the 9 lives helix. In reality, all of Fang Xinjian's martial life forms were stored in the high-dimensional sword realm to cultivate. What he revealed in the physical world were just his martial life forms, his projections. Although the projections were very similar to him, they were ultimately not his entire self. With that, after each martial art projection was killed, another martial art projection could be projected. The Celestial Eradication Sword Technique, Heart Sword Path, Royal Heavenly Great Art, and High-Dimensional Sword Arts. There were a total of 4 martial arts and 4 projections. It was only by dealing with all 4 projections that Fang Xinjian's interference with the physical world would he be able to truly stop until Fang Xinjian had accumulated sufficient power to carry out the next projection. The existence of the high-dimensional sword realm could be like many spiral drills, taking root in the higher dimensions of each world and connecting to the consciousness of the masses through Dragon Qi. Therefore, once he successfully cultivated the 9 lives helix, Fang Xinjian's actual body would be able to exist in the higher dimensions of this world through the connection of Dragon Qi and the group consciousness. Ordinary 3-dimensional contact would not be able to touch him. Once his projection was destroyed, he would temporarily lose the ability to interfere with the physical world. Once the connection with the Dragon Qi was severed, he would be able to retreat from the higher dimensions. The 9 lives helix was an extremely complicated martial art that encompassed the world, space-time, consciousness, Dragon Qi, dimensions, life, and many other systems. From the martial art projection to the high-dimensional sword realm, to the connection between Dragon Qi and group consciousness, to the world's consciousness and the depth of the world's origin, it could be said to be extensive, profound, and extremely profound. It was a martial technique that one would not be able to cultivate successfully even if they spent several hundred or thousands of years without heaven-defying aptitude. However, once the 9 lives helix was completed, Fang Xinjian could be said to have an almost indestructible life force. In fact, as long as the other party did not have the ability to interfere with higher dimensions, they would not be able to attack his actual body and cut off his connection with the world and the group consciousness. Meanwhile, he would be able to continuously absorb various energy sources and draconic qi in the world to recover and cultivate, using projections to interfere with the physical world of lower dimensions. In this state, it was as if he had become a part of the operating system of the entire world. This was also the reason why he created the 9 lives helix. Not only was it to raise his high-dimensional combat prowess, but it was also to get close to the origin of the world, the source of all life and consciousness. It was also to resist the curse of 5 years of lifespan. The spiral that Fang Xinjian had turned into flickered, appearing and disappearing, as if it was between illusion and reality. As the spiral spun faster and faster, its tip seemed to have rushed into an indescribable and indescribable place. That was the source of countless consciousnesses, the place where all life in the world gathered. Fang Xinjian relied on the connection with a hint of draconic qi to enter this world's group consciousness. The so-called group consciousness was the place where the consciousnesses of all life with consciousness gathered. This place did not exist in a certain point in the physical world, but in a higher dimension of the world instead. The waves emitted by countless consciousnesses gathered together like the entire planet's magnetic field, jointly producing various effects on the world. To them, the entire world was just an extremely small point. Right now, Fang Xinjian was relying on the connection with the draconic qi in the Royal Heavenly Great Art to enter the group consciousness. In this world, this place was actually the core of the Tiangang Disha system. At this moment, the connection between the high-dimensional sword realm and the group consciousness was opened up, and the 9 lives helix completed its first step. 10 days later, Fang Xinjian sat cross-legged in the secret room located in the deepest part of the arsenal. 4 streams of sword light would occasionally fly and flash around him. Right now, the martial art projection that had appeared in the physical world was the Celestial Eradication Sword Technique's martial art projection. As for the other martial art projections, they were continuing to cultivate in the high-dimensional sword realm, silently engulfing the various energy sources and draconic chi in this world. The Nine Lives Helix has already taken root in this world's group consciousness. As long as the connection with the draconic chi isn't severed, I'll be able to project myself into this world. Moreover, each and every one of my actions will be reinforced by the group consciousness. It's like I'm a different kind of heaven-blessed cultivator. With the Royal Heavenly Great Art, high-dimensional sword arts, and his research into this world, Fang Xinjian finally relied on the Nine Lives Helix to enter deep into this world's group consciousness. However, this world was different from ordinary natural worlds after all. Other than the group consciousness, it also possessed its own world consciousness, that giant's consciousness. Even this world's group consciousness had been modified by the giant a long time ago, forming the Tiangang Disha system. Is this feeling what it means to be blessed by the heavens? Fang Xinjian slowly tried to figure out what he was feeling right now. The feeling of controlling the hearts of the people in the world, and the future situation gushed into his heart. The lives in this world that have consciousness are still dominated by humans. Controlling the hearts of the people means that the Nine Lives Helix has taken root in this world's group consciousness, which is also the high-dimensional world. Other than the 3 dimensions of length, width, and height, each world also had many dimensions that were hard for humans to detect. These dimensions included time, space, and even those that humans were unable to understand. The expansion of the universe meant that the dimensions kept on increasing. As the variable of life increased, there was also the addition of the special higher dimension of group consciousness. Right now, Fang Xinjian was using the Nine Lives Helix technique to enter the depths of the group consciousness. The consciousnesses of countless lives flashed before his eyes. At this moment, Fang Xinjian could deeply sense that this ability to control the world, the hearts of the people, and guide the future was even more profound and unfathomable than the various destructive prowess of martial art projections in the material world. Pinching his fingers and sensing the power contained in the projection, Fang Xinjian estimated that the martial will of his celestial eradication sword technique's martial art projection was still around 8,500 points. It was no different from the past. This was also because the Nine Lives Helix was not a technique that directly increased one's strength. Instead, it was a method that changed the intrinsic quality of his life. Chapter 1083. However, just like the shadow that was encompassed by the sun, the martial art projection would forever only project a part of the actual body. Even if this celestial eradication sword technique martial art projection was destroyed, the other martial art projections would not suffer any damage at all. They could still project into the physical world with their martial will at 8,500 points. It was like how the sun had changed its angle and projected a different kind of shadow of a palm. With this, although there was still no intrinsic change to the amount of his powers, there was a qualitative improvement in terms of his performance. This was the benefit of a change in the intrinsic nature of one's life. At this moment, Fang Xinjian discovered that his stats window had disappeared. At this moment, he had completely broken through the limitations of the night martial arts. The path that he had taken was a path that he had opened up himself. However, his lifespan still did not change at all. Is this the power of a demonic god? Even though I've completely broken away from my original life form, to think that I'm still restricted by this lifespan. However, although his lifespan was still restricted, as his life form went through a complete change, his cultivation speed, survivability, battle means, and his realm all went through a qualitative transformation. Right now, the entire world was in his eyes, and even the various changes in the future kept on flashing in his mind. The Nine Lives Helix's enhancement has strengthened the ability to interfere with group consciousness, and it has also improved the ability of martial art projections. The ability to interfere with group consciousness was one's domination, guidance, and influence over people's hearts. It also relied on high-dimensional abilities to carry out direct interference. The battle prowess of martial art projections was the ability to interfere with the physical world. It required an even stronger martial art clone or an increase in the abilities of the original martial art clone. However, the original martial art clones were basically all cultivating in the sword realm. What Fang Xinjian needed to do was to create new martial art clones that were even stronger. To Fang Xinjian, who had grasped so many martial arts, this was not something that was too difficult. Before the 9 Lives Helix, he had already conceptualized some new martial arts. It was just that the nurturing of each martial art clone required a tremendous amount of energy. Right now, it was still impossible for Fang Xinjian to mass-produce them. In the sword realm, all sorts of radiations, light energy, heat energy, geomagnetic energy, and other energy sources were drawn over and gathered together. Concurrently, seething dragon chi descended from the sky and landed in the gathered energy sources, gradually forming a blurry human figure. A new martial art projection started to be born. This martial technique can be called the Sattva sword technique. On the day of the battle, Qinghe, Goddess Gorge. At this moment, the Goddess Gorge, including the area within a radius of 10 miles, was filled with countless martial arts figures. It was unknown how many experts in the world were attracted by today's battle. Of course, because of Marie's battle record, most people were more optimistic about the South's victory. They even felt that Fang Xian might not participate. At the location of the decisive battle near the Goddess Gorge, the 2 valleys in the north and south had been occupied by the Imperial Army and the Southern Rebel Army. The sentry posts were filled with soldiers at the innate realm, and they forbade any unaffiliated people from the pugilistic world from approaching. On the clear river, there were battleships patrolling about, responsible for clearing the area on the river. "Have all the seals been completed?" Fang Yuan asked. The assistant on the side said, "We've already cleared the area. Except for some of the invited masters, the rest of the Jianghu people have been isolated 3 miles away." Fang Yuan nodded in satisfaction, her eyes staring at the beautiful red figure at the top of the gorge. She looked at the red long robe that was like a ball of flames fluttering in the wind, and a hint of complicated emotions flashed in her eyes. Prince sat at the edge of the gorge barefooted. Her fair and tender feet hung in midair, swaying occasionally. A layer of bewitching red flashed on her toes, revealing her small and exquisite ruby-like toes. She swayed her legs as she drank wine while looking at the gushing river water under her feet. It was as if she was not worried about the upcoming battle at all. On the opposite side of the Goddess Gorge, Wang and Zhao Yinglan stood together. Although they were equipped with the Universe Night System, they did not feel any sense of security when facing that fiery red figure. Even until today, they were still unable to contact Fang Xinjian. Anyone who got close to the factory would be attacked by Jiuqian. Time continued to pass, and from morning to sunset, Prince waited quietly on the Goddess Gorge. However, Fang Xinjian did not appear at all. The people who had been waiting quietly gradually started to make a ruckus. Many people started to suspect if Fang Xinjian was avoiding the battle. What's going on? Could it be that he's going to continue waiting like this? Could it be that Fang Xian is afraid? However, His Majesty's martial arts cultivation is extremely high. It's very normal that Fang Xian is afraid and doesn't dare to come. Faced with the various doubts from the rebel army on the south bank, the people from the imperial court on the north bank were unable to rebut them. There were even quite a number of people who suspected if their emperor did not dare to come. Just then, Prince suddenly stood up, looked at the sky, and laughed out loud. "Fang Xinjian, you're finally here." In the sky, a white figure walked down step by step. He was like a banished immortal that had descended to the mortal world, giving off an indescribable feeling of calmness. "Maria, it seems that you've made great progress in your seclusion this time around," Fang Xinjian said as he stepped on void space and looked down at Prince. Prince smiled faintly. If you're still thinking of sealing me, I'd advise you not to think about it. Although I'm still unable to create a seal like yours, I won't be easily pulled into a low-dimensional world either. As he spoke, Prince's body suddenly exploded, turning into a mass of invisible golden light that extended out toward the entire sky. In the blink of an eye, he had turned into a huge golden man that was several hundred kilometers tall, and it was still growing. Prince had released her virtual image right from the start, and her virtual image was actually her own appearance. Fang Xinjian thought thoughtfully, this suits her character very well. In her understanding, there's nothing in the world that's stronger and more honorable than herself. Prince's series of changes had long since stunned the countless cultivators who were watching the battle. At the beginning, they could still see a blurry human figure above their head. However, as Prince's body continued to enlarge, there was only a stretch of golden light that encompassed the entire sky. No one could see the prince's full appearance anymore. The scene in front of them completely destroyed the worldview of everyone present. To think that there's such a martial art in this world? Zhao Yinglan said in astonishment. How old is Marie now? However, the size of her figure did not affect Prince's sharp observation ability. Seething golden light descended from the sky, accompanied by Prince's voice. Fang Xinjian, aren't you going to release your virtual image? Virtual image? I've long since lost it. Humph. With a cold snort, countless streams of golden light slashed onto Fang Xinjian's body, instantly slashing Fang Xinjian into dust. Chapter 1084. Prince's Son of Heaven Sword Manipulation Art was a perfect integration of high-dimensional sword arts and the Royal Heavenly Great Art. Right now, not only did Prince possess the astonishing power of her martial will cultivated from the Royal Heavenly Great Art, but she also had the ability to attack across dimensions. At the same time, half of the dragon energy in the world was being used as a resource to strengthen her power. Under the continuous slashes of the golden light, it was an absolute clash between two powers. Faced with Prince's high-dimensional attacks, there was no possibility of dodging. Fang Xinjian turned into a myriad of light spots and completely evaporated. Despite having wiped out Fang Xinjian with a single move, Prince did not relax in the slightest. It was because she knew that no matter what, it would be impossible for Fang Xinjian to be wiped out by her with a single move. However, after a single move, Fang Xinjian disappeared without a trace. Even Prince's sudden inspiration could not detect his existence. How is this possible? Could he really be dead? Just as Prince was feeling puzzled, Fang Xinjian, who was in the high-dimensional spacetime, had already changed her form slightly. Therefore, a second martial art projection appeared above the goddess gorge. Unlike the celestial eradication sword technique's martial art projection earlier, this martial art projection flashed with a hazy glow, making it hard for one to see it clearly even if they tried their best. It was like some kind of mirage. It was the Heart Sword Path's martial art projection. At the instant the Heart Sword Path appeared, powerful illusory arts were unleashed concurrently. Fang Xinjian disappeared without a trace before everyone's eyes, as if he had never appeared before. However, this top-notch illusory art that could deceive most Tier 6 divine-level experts was unable to deceive Prince, who had grasped high-dimensional sensory abilities. In Prince's eyes, the entire three-dimensional world was now connected into one. Any operation based on three-dimensional spacetime would not be able to hide from her senses. It was the same even for the Heart Sword Path, which directly changed electromagnetic wave. With an explosive rumble, several thousand streams of sword cheese slashed down fiercely in the sky, instantly dismembering the Heart Sword Path martial art projection. Sensing that Fang Xinjian had once again disappeared from this world, the prince said coldly, "Fang Xinjian, what kind of game are you playing?" Fang Xinjian did not say anything. He simply turned his high-dimensional body again and projected the next projection into the three-dimensional material world. This time around, it was the Royal Heavenly Great Arts martial art projection. Almost as soon as Fang Xinjian appeared, the entire sky was filled with golden light. It was as if a golden carpet was floating beneath his feet, forming a sharp contrast with the golden virtual image that the prince had transformed into in the sky. The two golden lights, one above and one below, were equally domineering and noble, but they were also competing against each other, as if fire and water could not tolerate each other. Just as Fang Xinjian reappeared, a gigantic golden palm slapped towards him from afar. Using the Royal Heavenly Great Art before me? I'll also use the Royal Heavenly Great Art and the same thing to defeat you. The entire palm was almost the size of a city, and the uneven skin and veins on it were very clear. However, given its size, it was like many small mounds and ravines, making one feel astonished. With such a world-shaking palm slapping down, the entire regional prefecture was almost blown by the strong gales brought up by the huge palm. Large areas of trees were blown up into the sky. Faced with this palm attack from the prince, Fang Xinjian did not dodge and also slapped out fiercely. In that instant, the golden light on his body gathered to form a palm that was slightly smaller than the prince's. The two huge golden palms collided fiercely in midair. That world-shaking collision could be seen clearly even from several hundred lis away. It was because both palms were too big. As the two gushes of power collided intensely, a series of gales were squeezed out from the palms, shooting out in all directions. The terrifying gales swept down, filling the sky with dust, sand, grass, and houses. Within a short period of time, many people had died under this gales. Just this exchange of palms that seemed to be probing each other created a terrifying gales that was hard to come by in 1,000 years. The damage caused was almost uncountable. Within the entire region, countless houses had collapsed, countless trees had been blown up into the sky, and countless farmlands had been destroyed. After this attack, the entire Goddess Gorge was unable to withstand the shock waves formed by the intense air flow and collapse. Several 10 million tons of rocks and sand plunged into the Qing River's estuary, blocking up the entire river. The cultivators who were watching the battle in the surroundings were unable to withstand this gush of gales. Most of the Xiantian realm cultivators were sent flying, and only a small number of Disha realm and Tiangang realm cultivators were able to stay where they were, looking at the sky in great astonishment. If it was not because the average martial prowess in this world was sufficiently strong, the earlier exchange of attacks would have been sufficient to kill several 100,000 or even several million people. Fang Xinjian looked at the blocked river under his feet and put his hands together to form seals. A royal heavenly great palm imprint slapped out gently, shattering all the rocks that had blocked up the river. They turned into powder that scattered in the air, and the river became clear once again. With our current strength, if we were to continue fighting, we'll probably wipe out all the living creatures in this world. If that happens, this world will completely lose its civilization, and we won't be able to pass through the heavenly barrier to return. The prince said coldly, "What do you want? Why don't we change to another battlefield?" Fang Xinjian said with a faint smile. As he spoke, the golden light dissipated, and Fang Xinjian disappeared and reappeared. However, this time around, there were spatial gaps that kept on forming and disappearing around him. This was clearly a martial art projection that had shattered void space. You know how special this world is. Countless parallel worlds are in the vicinity. As long as we can connect to the world's consciousness, we'll be able to find them. As he spoke, Fang Xinjian put his palms together, and a pitch-black tunnel formed in his palms. It instantly expanded to the height of a person. "Come with me." Fang Xinjian turned and took a step, entering the tunnel and disappearing without a trace. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" The prince let out a cold snort, and at the next moment, A myriad of golden light gushed out toward the black tunnel like waves of paint. The golden sky that could be seen across the entire land was like paint that had been washed away by water. It gradually faded and disappeared, and the entire sky returned to its original state. On the Goddess Gorge, which had turned into a stretch of shallow beach, over 1,000 spectating cultivators looked at the empty sky in silence. They were still astonished by the scene of the two of them exchanging blows earlier. Each of their actions was a scene of destruction. It was as if the entire world would not be able to withstand their ravaging. Although this battle had yet to come to an end, it was destined to become a legend, a myth, and be recorded in the annals of history. Feng Xinjian had once seen the giant's body that was formed from countless worlds. Even this martial arts world that he had come to was just one of the countless worlds within that giant's body. Each of these worlds was a planet of different sizes. Right now, Feng Xinjian had broken through void space and the world's consciousness's lockdown. He had broken through void space and arrived in another world from one world. At the instant he stepped out of the tunnel, he sensed that the world in front of him was another new planet. Chapter 1085. On the vast and boundless land, there were huge wild beasts everywhere. It was as if they had come to the dinosaur era. Monsters that were several tens of meters long and weighed over 10 tons were everywhere on this planet. However, this scene did not last for too long. As an extremely surging and huge golden figure appeared, the entire primitive planet welcomed its doomsday. Feng, Xing, Jian. Violent sound waves exploded in the sky above the entire world, forming a windstorm that encompassed the entire planet. Within a short period of time, countless animals were killed from the tremors. At the next moment, the Son of Heaven's sword manipulation art was activated at full power. A huge golden finger descended from the sky, instantly landing on Feng Xinjian's head in a high-dimensional attack. It then clashed against the royal heavenly great palm imprint that Feng Xinjian had counterattacked with. Boom! The entire land was unable to withstand the unbridled attacks from these two experts. Right now, the two of them no longer had any reservations. When they attacked, they did not use any power to control their powers at all. The repercussions of their attacks immediately spread out. First, piercing golden light encompassed the sky within a range of several 10,000 lis. Countless wild beasts were blinded by this piercing light. Then endless air currents radiated out from the point where the two attacks collided. They were like the shock waves formed from the explosions of many nuclear missiles, plowing through the entire ground fiercely. Wherever they passed by, all the mountains, trees, animals, and rivers above the ground would be crushed, turning into dust that was blown into the sky. A great sandstorm that could last for several decades was formed, turning the entire land into a desert. However, this was not the most terrifying thing. It was that Feng Xinjian had smashed into a mountain range like a meteor. The entire mountain range instantly shattered, and several thousand strong gales with strong atmospheric pressure shot out in all directions at supersonic speed. They were like countless invisible flying swords that tore through all the matter they encountered along the way. After Feng Xinjian smashed through the entire mountain range, he continued tearing through the earth under the seething power, probing downward. The outermost layer of the entire planet was made up of lithospheres that ranged from several tens to several hundred kilometers. They formed the various terrains on Earth. Right now, the entire process was as if the crown princess had shattered a large half of the continent with a single tap of her finger. The entire continent's lithosphere had shattered, causing the continental shelf and terrain to become severely deformed. As the lithosphere shattered, the entire continent was split into over 10 continents. Countless mountains turned into plains, plains turned into hills, and hills turned into seas. The force that shattered the lithosphere directly hit the planet's asthenosphere. The asthenosphere, which was located between the lithosphere and the mantle, was at a temperature of 1,300 degrees Celsius and a pressure of 30,000 atmospheres all year round, making the metals and magma there semi-viscous and moving slowly. With Fang Xinjian's collision, both the crown princess and his powers exploded explosively, causing a series of tempestuous waves to rise up in the asthenosphere. Moreover, the powers kept on being fed back to the lithosphere and land above them. The continental shelves were broken one by one, and the 12 broken continents flowed violently in the asthenosphere, directly causing another round of continental drift. With a single strike, hundreds of millions of living beings in the entire world died, and the environment was completely changed. However, Fang Xinjian had once again entered a space-time tunnel. The prince let out a furious bellow, and the golden light that filled the sky also broke through the lithosphere, entering the space-time tunnel of the asthenosphere. After that, 7 more primitive planets were passed by in the battle between the two of them. The two of them only exchanged blows once in each world, but the damage caused by each collision would destroy the entire planet's ecosphere and cause drastic changes in the continental shelf, lithosphere, and asthenosphere. If they stayed on a planet for too long, the entire planet would probably become a hellish planet with extremely high atmospheric pressure, no liquid water, and a surface temperature of hundreds or even thousands of degrees Celsius. In these 7 consecutive exchanges, the prince relied on his powerful strength to constantly suppress Fang Xinjian. However, there was not the slightest excitement or smile on her face. Fang Xinjian, how long are you going to run for? Use your full strength to fight me. Once again, they arrived in another world. The surging golden light enveloped the entire sky of the planet. I won't let you escape again. However, just as the prince was about to wipe out the entire planet, her countenance suddenly changed, and she stopped what she was doing. On a tall mountain, 2 streams of light, one red and one blue, flashed and collided. Each time they clashed, the sound would reverberate across a distance of 100 li, and streams of air currents would tear through the sky. Ha 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 ha, Harris, your thunderbolt punishment is getting more and more powerful. A burly man whose entire body was covered in crimson flames laughed out loud. Opposite him, an elderly man whose entire body was covered in electricity said coldly, Jero, your flaming light tribulation is already able to produce plasma flames, right? As expected of the person with the strongest destructive prowess on this planet. The two of them were clearly top-notch experts on this planet. After flattering each other for a while, they were about to exchange blows again. However, at the next moment, waves of golden light appeared and almost instantly encompassed the entire sky. Their countenances changed, and they looked toward the sky at the same time. What's going on? Is it an aurora? We're on Mount Radshaw. How can we possibly see an aurora? The elderly man whose entire body was covered in electricity frowned and said, Could it be that the sun has changed? Or is it cosmic rays? Simultaneously, the entire planet noticed this strange change. All the observatories and space agencies of various sizes were in a state of astonishment. Countless social networks and official media outlets were in an uproar. No one knew what was going on with the sudden change in the weather. The lives on these planets were the reason why the prince had stopped. Sensing the densely packed lives and various active energies on the entire planet, the prince broke into a cold smile. If I were to really kill all the living creatures on this planet, with so many heaven-blessed cultivators and intelligent life forms dying, I'd probably suffer the full-powered retaliation of the world's consciousness, right? Is this your plan? The prince's high-dimensional senses instantly grasped Fang Xinjian's location, and waves of invisible powers descended. On the tall mountain, the man whose entire body was covered in crimson flames locked his gaze onto the sky. He looked at Fang Xinjian, who had suddenly appeared, and asked, Who is that? Our battle is a secret. This person is sneaking around. There's definitely something wrong with him. The elderly man who was covered in electricity frowned, and dashed out toward Fang Xinjian. Capture him first. However, the prince said furiously, "Damn it." Earlier, she had stopped her attacks once again because two natives had suddenly appeared next to Fang Xinjian. She had almost killed them as well. The two natives had auras that were similar to heaven-blessed cultivators. They were clearly heaven-blessed cultivators from this world. Fang Xinjian then started to fly slowly, not distancing himself from the natives. It was as if he was unwilling to let the prince attack at full power without holding back. "Fang Xinjian, what on earth are you planning to do?" The elderly man with electricity looked at Fang Xinjian, who was gradually turning into a small dot. However, he accelerated and let out a deep bellow, "Be careful, he's trying to escape." "Fang Xinjian, are you planning to use the natives from this world to avoid my attacks?" The prince let out a furious bellow, and a terrifying power turned into a point the size of the tip of a needle, descending onto Fang Xinjian's body. Chapter 1086. The golden energy appeared on Fang Xinjian's body in the form of a high-dimensional attack. Then it instantly turned into a light pillar that pierced through the sky, drowning Fang Xinjian completely. In order to control the repercussions of the attack, Prince had spent a tremendous amount of energy and power to condense the destructive prowess of this attack, reducing its influence on the physical world, and controlling the light pillar to a diameter of only 2 meters. Despite this, the destructive prowess it displayed was still terrifying. The golden light pillar rose up, piercing through several hundred kilometers of the atmospheric layer in the blink of an eye. Then it extended out toward the endless starry sky. Downward, it continued to vaporize and shatter the ground, instantly piercing through several hundred kilometers of lithosphere and striking into the iron and nickel layer underground. However, the repercussions of the attack appeared and ended in an instant. The old man with lightning bolts and the old man with flames stared at the light pillar that had suddenly appeared and disappeared with a flash. When they saw the bottomless hole under their feet, their eyes were filled with astonishment. They had never seen such an astonishing prowess and terrifying destructive prowess on this planet before. However, after Fang Xinjian's figure was engulfed by the golden light and disappeared, he soon appeared once again. This time, he had changed to another martial art projection. "Maria, you still haven't recognized this world?" Prince was stunned for a moment. This world. Her marshal will quickly listened to the countless information in the entire world through high-dimensional senses. She could see many cities rising up from the ground at the ends of the world. She could hear the electromagnetic waves rippling to and fro in the atmosphere. She could hear the hints of electric signals in the submarine cables, the whispers between lovers, the complaints between mothers and daughters, and the conversations of teachers in class. Several 10,000 kilometers away in a classroom in a school. "Teacher, why did the dinosaurs go extinct?" There have been many explanations and hypotheses for the dinosaurs' extinction. However, the most popular and most accepted one in the academic world is the asteroid impact theory. 70 million years ago, an asteroid collided with Earth, wiping out 80% of the living creatures on the entire planet. The collision event caused a tsunami that was several hundred meters tall across the entire planet and an intense earthquake with a magnitude of 10 or above. A large area of the Earth's crust was evaporated, causing countless fragments to fly into the sky, forming a meteor shower that enveloped the entire planet's atmosphere. The entire Earth became a huge furnace. Even the largest continent at that time collapsed because of this violent impact, and then the continent drifted away under the effect of mantle convection. The Earth's orbit has also changed, making the entire planet's environment more suitable for human survival. Countless information converged in Prince's mind, allowing her to react to the situation in front of her. This world was created by us? Was it my previous attack that caused the extinction of the dinosaurs in this world? Terrain changes? After saying this, the prince immediately began to deny it again. Impossible, there is a difference of tens of millions of years. How could it be the same world? Maria, do you really know where you are now? Fang Xinjian looked at the golden light that filled the sky and said, "The planet under our feet is one of the planets you destroyed earlier. It's its future." You're saying that you can traverse space-time? What kind of joke is that? How could you possibly do something like that? The prince said furiously. Concurrently, streams of golden sword light filled the void space as the Son of Heaven's sword manipulation art was activated. They turned into streams of sword force that could slice through continents and stood on Fang Xinjian's body. However, when the sword light landed this time around, it disappeared the instant it came into contact with Fang Xinjian's body. It did not have any effect at all. What on earth did you do? The prince was extremely puzzled. This is that planet's parallel world, Fang Xinjian said. I'm unable to traverse the same world's past and future, but I can find its future world. This isn't a jump in the timeline but a change in space. At the same time, it's also the framework that Giant created countless worlds. He includes many parallel worlds. The golden light in the sky kept on trembling and expanding, but the prince's voice did not appear again. However, Fang Xinjian continued to say, "Maria, even if we were to continue fighting, I'd be able to exhaust you to death after spending a few years. However, I believe that ending is something that neither you nor I wish for. Therefore, I specially found this world and unleash the strongest move that I can derive to defeat you." Strongest move? The prince asked. That's right. This sword attack is called the Sattva sword technique, Fang Xinjian said calmly. After saying this, he disappeared. In the prince's senses, Fang Xinjian had already disappeared completely. Just as the prince was feeling puzzled, she immediately sensed that something was amiss. To think that her powers, which encompassed the entire planet, were starting to dissipate at an unbelievable rate. No, it was not dissipating. Instead, it was an even more powerful and violent attack that was melting away her powers from an unbelievable angle. What's going on? Within a short few minutes, over half of the golden light in the sky above the entire planet had dissipated. The prince tried all sorts of methods to stop the situation, but there was no effect at all. The speed at which her powers dissipated got increasingly faster, and in the blink of an eye, the phantom image disappeared. She had already returned to her human form and appeared in midair. The prince looked at her hands in a daze and said in disbelief, "What did you do?" Fang Xinjian's voice rang out in the prince's mind. "My Sattva sword technique needs to enter deep into the entire world's collective consciousness and gather the thoughts of all living beings before it can be performed. Therefore, I left behind my will in this world 70 million years ago. Right now, the past and future are already connected together." Sattva sword technique? The prince said in a daze. What kind of martial technique is this? Impossible. Even if you can borrow the powers of all the living beings on this planet, it's impossible for you to surpass me. I'll be able to kill them all with a single thought. Fang Xinjian said calmly, "Intelligent life forms are existences with the most variables in all the universes. When a universe gives birth to them, they become one of the foundations of the entire universe, becoming the most important factor in changing the future. Grasping all life forms means grasping the future. The probability of every single life form and thought controls 99% of the entire world's future. After my Sattva sword technique has confirmed the past and future worlds, it controls the powers of all the living beings in this entire timeline. I'm not borrowing the powers of the living beings on a single planet, but the powers of all the living beings in the entire timeline." Chapter 1087. At this moment, in this world's high-dimensional space, a crimson spiral had already entered the depths of the group consciousness, piercing out toward the source of all life. As they spoke, Fang Xinjian appeared before the prince and pulled the prince into his embrace. The prince struggled hard but was restrained by an invisible force. She could only glare at Fang Xinjian and ask, "What are you trying to do?" As she spoke, a faint blush appeared on her fair face. "There's no meaning in your struggle. Every plank time in the timeline can give me a portion of the power of all the living beings in the world. The amount of power I can borrow every second is an astronomical figure, and this figure is still continuously increasing." Fang Xinjian looked at the prince and said, "To what extent it can grow to is a figure that even I'm unable to calculate." Right now, the prince sensed a majestic power that surpassed her sensory abilities and imagination, encompassing her entire body. Before this power, even her will seem to be trembling, like a mortal facing a falling sun. Faced with this terrifying power, she could not help but feel great respect and worship, and the blush on her face became even more obvious. The prince possessed powers that far surpassed those of the same age or experts of the same level as her. Due to her experiences, she also had a great sense of worship toward power. When Fang Xinjian displayed the Sattva sword technique's endless and bottomless powers, she was deeply captivated by this power. "Surrender, Maria," Fang Xinjian said. "Right now, as long as I'm willing to, defeating you will only take a single thought. Let go of me." The prince glared fiercely at Fang Xinjian. Fang Xinjian shook his head. "If you don't surrender, I'll have no choice but to kill you." The prince's face flushed up again and she said coldly, "You're restraining my chest too tightly." Fang Xinjian was slightly stunned. He looked at his and the prince's positions and said, "Let's surrender." Prince's face became redder as she felt more and more powerful forces invading her body. She said impatiently, "I know. I lost this time. Let me go." Fang Xinjian looked at the prince with some doubt. Suddenly, a trace of understanding appeared in his eyes. He let go of the prince and said, "So it's you, shut up." Flustered and exasperated, the prince interrupted him and said angrily, "Can this Sattva sword technique of yours be used outside this world?" "Of course not." Fang Xinjian shook his head and said, "I borrowed the power of countless living beings in this timeline, and it can only be used in this world. However, with my current understanding of the world, I can return to this world at any time." In the high-dimensional space, the red helix was like a ship's anchor that was deeply embedded, helping Fang Xinjian to remember the location of this world. It was like a locator. Hearing this, the prince's eyes lit up. She wanted to say something, but she was a little hesitant. However, Fang Xinjian said, "All right, let's go back." He should have woken up after such a big commotion. Hearing that, the prince's countenance changed. "You're saying," at the next moment, the two of them disappeared without a trace amidst a series of shattered void space, leaving behind the man with flames and the old man with lightning who were staring at the sky with their eyes and mouths agape. When they returned to the goddess gorge, it was as if the entire river had not changed. It was as if time had still stopped at the moment they had left. However, when the prince's martial will scanned the land in Middle-earth, his countenance changed slightly. Over 2 years have passed? Different worlds circulate at different speeds, and the time that has passed is different as well. Fang Xinjian threw a glance at the land under his feet and then said to the prince, "Help the imperial court to take over the influences in the south. I'm going to set up the Sattva sword technique in this world." The prince's gaze flickered slightly as he said, "Doesn't your Sattva sword technique need to connect the past and future points in time? That's a temporary method and isn't stable. The cost of communicating between parallel worlds is too high," Fang Xinjian replied. "To be able to enter deep into the high-dimensional space-time and grasp the choices of all consciousness, truly controlling the past and future. This is the most stable and effective method." A short moment later, the prince's figure flashed, and he returned to a city in the south. Ever since Fang Xinjian and the prince had both disappeared in the battle, the North and the South had fought a few times. The North had super-technological weapons, while the South had Feng Yuan, a great Dao realm expert. Without Feng Shijian's orders, the young female android Jiuqian had been staying in the arsenal. Therefore, after a few battles where the victor could not be determined, the North and the South gradually reached a delicate balance. Under this situation, the night martial arts that Feng Shijian had left behind gradually spread out, and the power of ether particles started to spread out across the entire Middle-earth. The prince sensed the changes in the entire Middle-earth and thought, "Is this Feng Shijian's arrangement? He completed the mission to clear the trial while he was at it. Or could it be?" The prince arrived in a study. When Feng Yuan, who was behind the desk, saw the sudden appearance of the prince, she immediately went up and asked, "Sir?" Without giving her any time to ask questions, the prince went straight to the point, "Make some arrangements and prepare to surrender to the imperial court." Hearing this, Feng Yuan's countenance changed and turned extremely pale. During this period of time, she and her father, Prince Ding, had done many things that were worthy of being executed. Surrendering was the last thing she was willing to do. By then, even being exiled might be the best ending for them. However, she did not dare to rebut the prince. During the period of time she had followed him, she had a deep understanding of how terrifying he was. She could only grit her teeth and say, "As you wish." On the other side, Feng Shijian came up to Wang and the others and instructed, "After the victory, the other party will surrender. You guys will be in charge of receiving them." Ignoring his overjoyed subordinates, Feng Shijian turned into a stream of white light and soared into the sky. Looking at the thick layer of clouds under his feet, Feng Shijian asked, "How long are you planning to wait?" As Feng Shijian said this, hints of ripples appeared in the space before him, seeming to form the appearance of a man. Although the other party's appearance could not be seen clearly, Feng Shijian felt a sense of familiarity from the moment he appeared. That appearance was that of the giant he had seen before, the giant formed from countless worlds. "How should I address you? God? God? Creator?" Feng Shijian said as he looked at the formless person before him. "Someone from the country of delusions? That's not right. If you were there, you'd probably have been beaten to death a long time ago." A cold voice rang out in Feng Shijian's mind. A clone? A clone? A counterpart? Or a descendant? The other party did not seem to mind Feng Shijian's words and continued to make his own judgment. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.